We're good? Okay, everybody, let's turn on microphones, turn off cell phones. It's board meeting time, Tuesday, June 6th, our regularly scheduled Marquette Township board meeting. If you'd all join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Randy, roll call, please.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Fire Chief Ron DeMars, Manager Randy Gerard, and our Township Attorney Roger Zappa.
Okay, thank you. Plus a few committee members, too, in the audience. Next is the consent agenda tonight, including approval of the regular minutes of May 16th and draft minutes of work session minutes of May 16th. Received committee and other reports, fire department business meeting draft minutes, and the officers meeting draft minutes of May 8th. Road committee agenda for June 6th. Approved minutes of April 4th and draft minutes of May 2nd. Recreation meeting draft minutes of May 16th. Planning Commission minutes of April 26th. Water production report from April of 2017. Marquette Area Wastewater Treatment Facility Advisory Board meeting minutes of April 20th. Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority Board meeting agenda of May 24th. Their draft minutes of April 26th. Their balance sheet, profit and loss, budget and versus actual, general ledger and bills to be paid. Utility billing calendar for the township. My report. Correspondence not requiring board action, including Charter Communications quarterly franchise fee payment. State of Michigan, 2 notices, one from UPCO and one from SEMCO. And bills payable in the amount of $218,259.45, as well as financial and treasurer's report from April of this year. Anybody want to pull anything out?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Would request to remove B6, the water production report, for discussion.
B6. Okay. And we can add it down at the end. What do you think, Clerk Rattari?
That'd be good under after manager's report.
Okay. 11 or 12G. Water production report.
I'll make a motion approving the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Approval of the regular agenda. Anything that needs to be changed? Yes, Dave.
I would like to recommend that we add, or move that we add 2 items. One is consideration of the 2017 Road Rehabilitation Project Bid Award, and the other one would be consideration of the Marquette County Road Commission Consolidated Townships Road Repair Estimate.
Okay. Do we not all already have that first item in there, or is this something different?
We don't. We have the road rehabilitation update,
Right.
which would not be an action item if I read that right. These 2 are action items. Support.
Okay.
So where do you want to add
So
those,
new business?
Dave? Under.
Actually be going to new business, I believe.
Okay.
Under each
So H and I.
and I.
And one last comment.
Okay.
I would like to suggest that we move item 12D into a closed session after number 13, public comment.
12D.
12D, it's by the manager's request.
That's E.
Is that
The
E?
employment agreement and evaluation.
Yeah, yeah.
We can't actually do that, and Roger can explain why we can't just go into closed session, unless we're going to talk about, Randy has to request it for his evaluation.
thought he had.
He did request it.
It's in the board packet.
Okay, Roger?
What you have before you is a discussion about when you're going to do an evaluation, but you do not have an evaluation to discuss or perform at this point. Under the Open Meetings Act, the exemption that allows you to go into closed session is to consider an evaluation if the employee requests it. There may be a day when that happens, once you've completed the evaluation, but today isn't it.
We probably should have put discussion rather than consider.
Yes.
Okay.
There isn't an item to consider at this
Right,
point.
and that was the intent, was just to discuss this. And we can talk about that when,
Okay, then I just have the two.
okay? So do you have the right terminology, Randy, then, to add H and I? Because I didn't write that fast, but if you're
Yeah,
okay.
I can get it from Dave, because he had it there. I'll get it from him.
Okay,
So we're changing consider and put discuss in there?
yes. It's
For
good-
today.
It's to discuss what our plan is. It's a little bit early, but that's why we put it on here. And they're two different things. The employment agreement is different than the evaluation. And actually, the evaluation's first. Comes first chronologically. So, okay.
What are we adding?
We're adding H and I. The first one is road.
Consideration of the 2017 road rehabilitation project bid award.
which is in your packet under 11-1 as an unfinished business.
Right.
The other one is,
So is this something different, Dave, than what's included in the update?
yeah, these are something we actually need to take action on tonight.
All right.
It's more than an update.
What's I?
The other one is consideration of the Marquette County Road Commission Consolidated Townships Road Repair Estimate.
Make it any shorter? Yeah, Jen, don't you?
Sorry.
We have to do these tonight, right? We talked
Yes,
about
actually,
not
we do.
having stuff. Okay. Okay,
I can explain that when we get to them.
all right. Anything else? We have a motion and second, right?
I just have a motion. I didn't hear a
Second.
second.
Thought John did, but,
Okay. Let Pete just second it
okay.
to amend the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we can get going. Public comment. We do have a public hearing tonight, so if anybody wants to make any public comment for the regular meeting, this would be the time to do it. There will be another public opportunity to speak during the public hearing.
I'm Mike Springer, Eagles Nest Road. I'm here on behalf of the Rec Committee, and I would like to just give you an update on our spring cleanup that occurred on Saturday, the 20th of May, and also this weekend, the Iron Range Roll and celebrating National Trails Day at Schwimwood Park. So, this is Schwimwood Park, and this is where the main focus of the cleanup was. A lot of stuff blows in throughout the winter and throughout the year in that area. Dan Anamini and Cliff Stammer helped clear some dead wood. Dave Wiegand lent us his blower and also helped pick out the canopy that we used. And here's Reggie Durant. He's being instructed by Pete LaRue, showing him how they used to do it. Don't need a leaf blower for that. Here's Todd Caruth. He brought his fellowship. A lot of volunteers. Did an amazing job in terms of what we took out of that park. You can see we got LaRue's wagon here, and you can see how full it is with trash. And this is actually for the rec committee when we were planning at Lions Field. I know we have plans that are going in this summer, but I noticed the need for open space and green space there, just for people to be able to run around. And I don't know what game they were playing, but this one I recognized. So there were a lot of people over there at the warming building right after. The Todd's Fellowship brought potluck, and there was a lot of food that was donated by Walmart. I'll mention that again. So there was lots of food to choose from, but sometimes you got choosy people. This guy, he's obviously a football player, and he knows that you got to be in possession of the ball to win, so he's not going to let a hot dog get in his way. And it was nice to see Dan Everson come out and take a look at what's going on and visit with us. And Todd Caruth, Walmart provided over $200 worth of food for this barbecue. Also, the gentleman way back there in the orange, Hunter's Orange, that's Reggie Durant. I want to thank Reggie and Lynn and the Cedar Motor Inn for purchasing this canopy. It covered lots of tables, and we're going to be looking forward to using it in the future. Thank you. And here's a thank you from all the people that were enjoying the barbecue. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Last Saturday, we celebrated National Trails Day at Shulman Park, and the Iron Range Roll. This isn't going to work. Next, please. And I just wanted, one of the reasons we're big supporters of this is that it is a fundraiser for Reach and Rise youth mentoring program. It's a 16-mile run. I'm sorry, 16-mile bike ride. We had a 16-mile relay, and we also had an 8-mile run. And next. This is the program that it supports. I'm going to talk a little bit more about mentoring. Next. The lady on the left is Carol McCarthy. She's a group mentor for the Reach and Rise program. Next, please. But you could also be a mentor by working with another youth, and they're your charge for 1 year. Melissa can do a much better job of explaining this than I. Next. And here's a mentor and her mentee. Next. I want to tell you about, I had the opportunity to ride sweep on this, and our township was really well covered. We had real safe crossings, and I want to thank Rhonda Morrison and our fire department for helping out. Next, please. That was Northwoods Road. This is coming up to 492. That's probably our most dangerous crossing. If in the distance you can see actually the police were stopping traffic for bicyclists and runners. Next, please. Here's a couple of men here. I believe that's Rob Cochran. And next.
Winslow.
And I don't know this gentleman, but I want to point out the other gentleman is a sheriff. And the next picture shows you the guy that helped put this together. Click. On the right, Rhonda Mars. He's been the organizer of safety for our Iron Range Roll for the past 4 years. We've only had it for 4 years. And I want to thank him for doing the safety on this. He put this all together. He holds meetings with the sheriff and the city and West End support. So thanks, Ron. Next. He brought in lots of, we had a lot of safe crossings. Next. We had volunteers. Volunteers is really what makes something like this a success. We had 89 volunteers, as you can see from that. We had 190 participants, 23 individual runners, 20 relay runners, and 147 bikers. Next. Now, this is the results for the 16-mile women's bike race, and if you can see the final category there, I'm real proud of the lady that took second there. But this is, the reason I have this up there is just that this is not just about racers. I'm going to show you that it's in 1 minute and 10 seconds, just a video. At the start, they have these big stanchions with a banner up in Ishpeming at the Cliff Shaft Mine Museum. And I stood behind one of those with my camera in between it, and I took this, and this will give you a better idea who are the people that run this. Thank you. Go ahead, Randy. Crank it up. Okay, sorry. It's always a malfunction. It's usually caused by me. Okay. Okay, let's try that one more time. Well, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Once I get this working, maybe you'll see it at the last public comment.
Second public comment, okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Did you have anything else? Was that your end, Mike? You're good?
That was it.
For now?
It's great to support the mentoring program. Actually, Ron Marcy's daughter, Melissa Mark, is in charge of that.
Okay.
Great event. People participate.
Well, maybe later. We're not going anywhere yet. Okay, next up is a privilege comment. We have the director of the Peter White. Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. Thank you for reminding me, Dan.
My name is Robert Sims, 2662 Montgomery. I would also like to speak under item number 10 and 12G. A couple meetings ago, Lynn read a thing, board comments, and I asked her for a copy, and I got a copy right away. Thank you for that. And I have some responses to them. One of the ones said that you said the public is hearing recently at the meetings in township is being careless and reckless. Well, if you take a look at the meeting you had, the work session on the water, at the beginning of the year you had a water budget that was balanced. And it's still, Ernie said at the last meeting it was in good shape. But you raised the water rates 24%. You raised the debt service $5.50. Well, you know, to me, I don't know if it's that careless or recklessness or bad management. Then other one was staffing of the fire hall. Well, the extra person was hired in late March. In my opinion, or my knowledge right now, is the person that was responding from here to there is still doing it. Well, if the township was so far behind on their work, why is she still going there? And also, who's paying her? You know, as a taxpayer, that's my money where you're wasting. And you're talking about the person being singled out. Well, a few days before the 21st meeting of May, Randy had her name in the paper half a dozen times. And I still have the article if you want to read it. I asked you about to meet with the board of officers and to go over some of the requests I had. And you said to bring it up to staff. Well, it was brought up to Randy already, and nothing was done about it. That's why I wanted to talk with the officers. And you talked about accusing without facts. At the February 21st meeting, if you watched it, I told you I had the facts, and to call me and have a meeting with me. You never did. I've talked with Roger Zappa twice on this, but not from you. Ernie brought up about engineering for water, not going out for bids anymore. Well, if you look back in the history, you haven't gone out for bids for the parking lot lighting, dump truck, pickup truck for the building and grounds, and the pickup that replaced the Jeep. You're still using the Jeep. Back in 2012 or 13, it was so bad that you couldn't be used. Why are we still running it? You know, the procurement policy should be reviewed in December by the board. The last time it was done in 2010. All right? You changed the manager's spending August 4th, 2014. But the policy was never done. I came here and I asked a question about the meeting, work session for the fire department. Why was it taken off the website or YouTube and put up with minus 9 minutes? I still haven't received an answer on that. You know, and you also mentioned about receiving a letter. I don't know what was in the letter, but I heard parts of rumors, and I'm going to tell you that if I write you a letter, I'm going to sign it, and I won't come up and leave it on your door or on your desk in a brown envelope like one of the board members have done before. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Jack Dental, 2052 Center Street, Marquette, Michigan. That work session that you had was the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in my life. I hope each one of these board members take a look at it, okay? And put the responsibility on the person that it really was aimed at, and that's our manager. All right? Look at it, play it again, and then when you come forward and said you have a balanced budget told to you, and then just watch it. Watch what I seen, okay? It's disgusting. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Dan Pompo, 2422 Cherry Street. Just want to say I'm a little disappointed in the way this whole 24% increase of water came about. I think the biggest thing is I think this board used to always pride itself on making sure that everybody understood everything, and it's unfortunate that it seems we've had more press coverage concerning an ambulance than we did about a 24% increase in the water, and then only to have to turn around and schedule a work session on it the day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the day of the to decide you're going to decide that you're going to vote on it, which doesn't give the people a lot of chance to even question it, especially at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't think we've ever done that before, at least when I was on the board. the biggest question I think that got brought up was, I remember Kurt, when I watched the video of it, said something about, I don't understand over the last 10 years why we've lost money. I think it was pretty obvious at the last budget session why we've lost money. We've never bothered to budget in the principal for the debt services for the water department, which at the last budget was over $375,000. And the only way that money could possibly have been paid to the debt service was because they had to take it out of the rest of the funds in the water department, which basically means why we don't have any money left in the water department. So the solution, obviously, at that point in time was, well, let's raise $5 a month for debt service charges to try to cover that. Then the fact that we spent $153,000 on a project that we decided we don't want to do in the first place, when we should have never got that far to spend $153,000. Basically, the reason we didn't do the water project was because, as it was discussed, it was the pipes in the ground were probably still good enough to last another 20 or 30 years. We should have had that much information prior to spending $153,000 to find the rest of it. Manager Gerard said, well, we spent $500,000 on South Vanderbilt Road to put water and sewer in. Well, that's great, but did we really need to put water and sewer in? Just because they were putting a road in doesn't mean we had to do that. We never had the $500,000 in the budget to pay for it. Again, we took it out of whatever was left in the budget. Now, all of a sudden, we have to raise our rates 24% to cover that. Well, I heard the comment, well, I really like comparing the budget sessions to my home budget. Well, if you're going to do that, and that's the case, I could say, well, my neighbor has got a contractor who's going to do his house. So what the heck? I think I'll put a $500,000 addition to my home just because he's going to be here. It might save me some more money. I don't have the money to pay for it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then when it comes time for me to pay for it, I have to take everything I've had in my savings to pay that $500,000. Now my bills are coming due, so I guess what am I going to do? I guess I'll go to Social Security and say, hey, by the way, I need a big increase in my Social Security because I can't pay these bills. That is exactly what you're doing. You're coming back and saying, okay, you're paying for it because we screwed up. And I think the biggest problem here that's happened is nobody's held accountable for what goes on here. And I think that's where the main thing should be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else wish to address the board? You can. Andrea is the director of the Peter White Public Library. She has a quick little presentation for us.
Okay. Perfect. Hi, my name is Andrea Ingmeyer. I'm the library director of the Peter White Public Library, like Lynn said. And I'm here to just kind of give an overview of the last fiscal year. The information's getting a little dated at this point, but I think it's always helpful to come to you all and report how the library did in the past fiscal year and kind of give you an update of what we're doing now. So that's why I'm here. So in the last year, we renovated our teen area, made it a little bit more appealing to the teens in Marquette County. We've had a lot of really good feedback from them. They really like the colors. We added some art hangers in there so the kids could actually display their art. We did have quite a nice teen artwork display this year, actually in the teen zone, and the kids thought that was pretty amazing to come into the library and see their artwork there. We also displayed in the Small Works Gallery in the Arts and Culture downstairs, and then also in the Huron Mountain, so they got a lot of coverage. We've been making a lot of plans to increase efficiencies, so we've replaced lighting, moving to LED as much as we can. We continue to do that and look for ways to reduce our ever-increasing electric costs and keep our efficiencies very high. We also worked on some efficiencies in the community room. Our community room gets a lot of use during the year, and so we want to make sure that lighting down there, also sound, is adequate for the people who need to use the room. So speaking of meeting room usage, rooms in the library had over 1,400 uses in the 2015-16 calendar year, which I think is pretty amazing. That's a really, the rooms are always in use. You know, if you try to book one of our rooms, you have to plan ahead. Programming attendance. So our programming attendance continues to go up. Our children's programming, as you can see from the graph there, really took a big jump between 14-15 and 15-16. And the rest of our programming stayed pretty close, but the children's programming is just really blossoming. We have so many families coming in to use the library, and the youth services department is always bustling. Bustled. Speaking of youth services, there again, we have a lot of attendance, and the teen programming is really taking off too. We have Mary Schneeberger working out with the teens, and she's able to really find out what they are interested in and then get them in the building for the programs. So we feel like that's really important. It's an important demographic that sometimes gets overlooked. And Prime Time is a huge program that takes place in the fall. And that's a family literacy program, and we get a lot of donations from organizations in the community to help make that program really popular and really impactful for our families. So a whole family will come in, they get books, they learn about literacy, and they learn how to talk to their children about books, which is a skill that unfortunately a lot of people need some help building those skills. So we feel like Prime Time is a very important program that we offer. Adult and general programs, the biggest program series that we had in fiscal year 15-16 was Building Hope in Uncertain Times. It was a 9-month program based on a book called The Impossible Will Take a Little While, and it was really well attended. We had a lot of events focused around this book, just dealing with different topics of how do we work through problems and how do we develop solutions. So really, a really outstanding program. We had a lot of collaboration with other area organizations. NMU, we had a lot of musicians, MAPS, and the UP Poet Laureate was also very involved in that program. So 2016 was also a big year for us as far as millage renewals. We had all of our townships on the ballot this past year. We had 4 elections in August, and then Marquette Township was in November. And we had really high approval ratings in this past election. The lowest one was 72%, and the highest one was 79%. Everybody else was 77. So 77 was our magic number this year, and in the world of millage renewals. So we want to thank you for your continued support. We do know that the library is a very valuable resource for your residents, and we hope that we can continue a good working relationship with you. So the long-awaited township-specific statistics. So I put a few things here together, and I know that there's always interest in knowing how many households are card holders and not just card holders themselves. So we did run some statistics. Our system doesn't handle the household statistic very well because everybody has to be put in individually. So what we do is we run a report for township, and then we take all that data and deduplicate it and do a lot of, you have to run through line by line basically and pull out duplications. But essentially we're looking at about 950 households represented in Marquette Township with 1,800 card holders. So that's a little bit under 2 cards per household. Then the circulation is in this slide as well, 25,507 items checked out to Marquette Township residents, which comes out to an average of about 11 checkouts a person. And then I know townships are always interested too, what percentage of the population are card holders. And Marquette Township is one of our higher townships for that. We have 46% of the total population of Marquette Township who have library cards. I think that's a very good statistic. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any as we're going through too. And then our Dropbox statistics. So Marquette Township is, the book drop statistics are really increasing in Marquette Township. Our staff are currently making 2 stops a week. One stop was Not enough, because the book drop would be so full that they'd have a hard time getting the items out. It would be completely crammed full. So they are making two stops a week now in Marquette. So I think that's a really telling story as far as the usage of that book drop. It's very convenient for folks. Some other things from 15-16 fiscal year. Passports were very popular in that fiscal year. We had 305 in a steamship. We had 305 passports issued in that year, and 37 of them in November alone. Really, wow, outstanding statistic there. Our computer use is high. We had 1 month where our Wi-Fi technology counter fritzed out, so we're missing a month worth of Wi-Fi connections. And then also the reference questions answered by staff and website hits are on that screen, but that's also in your information, your handout. Some new things that have been added in the past year, since the end of that fiscal year, we added a collaboration with the seed library, and that's with a number of areas, organizations in Marquette County, including Transition Marquette, and there's a seed co-op and a few other organizations who come in and actually manage the seed library. We just provide them with this lovely old card catalog and the floor space, and they come in and they fill it, and they take care of talking with people. They're actually going to be in a couple times throughout the summer to answer questions. So that's a really nice collaboration that we've got going on right now, and it's not too late. You can come in and get seeds still. Growing season, there's still enough left. We just really are getting started. Speaking of gardens, the library has a group of dedicated volunteers who come in and take care of our gardens for us. And this last year, they added a children's garden and did some programming with the kids out in this garden. And it was very popular, and it's beautiful back there. We also have a bookstore now in the library. The Friends of the Library decided that they have so many donations, it's hard to keep up with the biannual book sales, the big book sales, so they started pulling some of the nicer things and putting them in a bookstore. That's upstairs on the top floor, and it's been very popular. So, finances. We've been working very hard to increase our fund balance, so we have a safety net. Part of that safety net is needed for tax tribunal settlements. It's also needed for any other incidental costs that may come up. So we've been working really hard to increase that fund balance. And we were able to increase it in 15-16 by quite a lot, $140,000. That's before we had to pay back a tax tribunal, though, so there's the caveat. But that's why we're trying to build that fund balance so that we have it in case we need it. Our upcoming project is, I hear the library called a gym all the time, and I agree with that. The gym is in need of a little polish, so that's what we're working on now. We've got some fairly substantial building issues that we're trying to address. We have, on the 1904 building, we have a crack in the facade, and actually the facade is starting to come away from the building a little bit. So we are looking at repairing that, and unfortunately, when you start looking at a repair of that nature, it goes all the way down to from the foundation to the roof line. It's all involved. So it's a pretty big undertaking. We also have a 20-year-old building. It's hard to believe, but it's been 20 years, and carpet's a problem. HVAC is starting to show its age. So we're looking at all of these efficiencies and making sure that the building is repaired and in good order. And so our plan for that is we will be on the ballot in the city of Marquette, August 8th, with a bond given our relationship with the city. The bond is only for the city of Marquette, and it will be basically a renewal of the current bond rate that we currently have. Our current bond is 0.0550, and the proposed is 0.04. These numbers are also easy to remember. 0.04796. So it's actually a little bit less of a millage than the current bond. But it will be all for capital improvements and making sure that the building is in good repair. So there's some photos of the crack in the facade, and it goes all the way up to the original roof line. You can see it in the windows. and all the way down the facade. And if you've been upstairs in the old part of the library outside the Shiras room and in that hallway between the bells, that's where a lot of the carpet issues are showing. It's buckled, it's a tripping hazard, so some things like that are just really pretty high on our list. We want to make sure that the library is accessible to everyone. And 20 years of love from the community means that a lot of our furniture is looking pretty shabby. So it's time to start making sure that we take care of all of those items and make sure that the library looks nice, feels comfortable to people. So we're looking at repairing and upholstering and replacing some furniture as well. And anything that we can do to reduce or increase efficiencies, reduce costs, that's what we're looking at right now. We hope that we can use some of this project that we're working on to streamline things, continuing with energy efficiencies, HVAC, the lighting. We all know that electric costs aren't going down, so we're looking at ways that we can reduce our need for the electricity. We have a big building, so it takes a lot. We do have some strategic planning sessions coming up. I wanted to make sure I mentioned this. The strategic planning sessions are June 17 through 19, and you can get those times and dates specifically on our website. I'd be happy to also send them out so that you all have invitations to those sessions. We're looking for community input on how the library can better serve the residents and patrons who come into the library. So we're looking for programming ideas, what do people need from us, and really trying to buff out a nice strategic plan with goals and objectives. Do you all have any questions for me?
I have one, Andrea. A couple years ago, when the tax tribunal hit you kind of hard, the city required that you put up your main trust fund that you were trying not to tap into. I think you were just spending the interest on it. I'm just wondering if you had to actually dip into that yet or not?
We have not.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, we've been, like I said, working very hard to build that fund balance so that we have a little cushion. When the tax tribunals first started hitting our budget, there was no fund balance to speak of. So when the repayment was required, we really did have to dig a little bit deeper, and we're hoping to not have to do that. So we're trying to keep operational costs in line with budget and keeping all those unknowns in mind too.
You were very helpful in educating some of the public through your other properties in downstate and across the UP when Dennis came and spoke to previous director and the board and went through the explanation of the tribunal, because at that point a lot of people didn't know what was involved.
Right.
And we were looking for help, and nobody would help anyway, much less financially, but the library board did jump on it and got the word out, notified a lot of people. So education's important, and communicating what the issues are, so I appreciate that your group jumped on that and tried to help.
Yeah, it certainly is a complicated issue.
Anything else for Andrea? Yes,
A
Pete.
question on your meeting room. Is that available to anyone, and is there a charge?
The meeting rooms are available to anyone. The charges are the same regardless of, if you're a resident or not, and they vary by room. I do not have all those statistics off the top of my head, but the community room's a little bit larger cost than, say, the Shiras room, but and there are guidelines as far as nonprofit versus profit, but yes, they're open to everyone.
Okay. Anything else? Well, thanks, Andrea. Appreciate you
welcome.
coming. That's good information.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Maybe we can do this once a year at least, or
yeah.
a couple times. Okay, do we have any board member comment? Yes, Ernie.
The only comment I have is in the editorial section or the end section of the paper today where individuals can write in comment from the manager from the city of Ishpeming on revenue sharing. He made a very good article on what revenue sharing is all about. and the effect it's having on local government, where there's very little effect, if any, on the state government. It's all pushed back to the local government. So if you have a chance, read that letter from the manager from the city of Ishpeming. And that is something that we've talked about, but it's hard to get the information out to residents as to what it's costing us and that. That's all.
Good. Yes, Randy?
We are going to have a August primary election now. It will be August 8th, a Tuesday. And some of the dates preceding that are important is, I think, July 7th, which is about a month from now, will be your last day to register to vote for that election. We are open to 4:30 now, so get in here by 4:30 to do that day. August 5th, which is the Township Community Day, I believe. I will be here from noon to 2 for any last-minute absentee ballots, either distribute or take them in. And August 8th will be the primary election. Polls open at 7 and close at 8. Now, we will have our new voting machines, so please be patient. I hope they're going to be easier than the last ones, but we'll find out. And we're going to do some training on those in June, and I'll get my election workers trained sometime in July on them. So. And then in November 7th will be the general election, and that'll be for the seat that Representative Akivala held. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Randy. Anybody else? You've got my manager's report, but I did want to comment on some of the things that were mentioned with Jack and Dan and Bob. Just that this board sets policies, as they all know, and our one employee, Manager Gerard, is the one who's expected to enforce them. So he is available, it's 8 o'clock in the morning till right now, 4:30, or he'll stay at night. These are his responsibility. Every one of these items that were discussed, whether it's the fire department or the water rates, work sessions, those are all his issues, and I turn them over to him. You're welcome to call him anytime, make an appointment. If you want facts and figures, or we can get information from the attorney. These are not board things to discuss. We pass them on, so that's my comment on that. We have no forum discussion tonight. We are going to have a public hearing, and it's 7:24, excuse me. So I will open the public hearing, and we have a comment section if anybody would like to talk about it. I'll give a brief explanation of why we're having this, and our fire department will take it up, and the manager can add anything. We can have questions for the attorney. Some of these might trigger some legal questions. I found out today that this question of having an ambulance in the township, as far as being available for our residents and visitors to the community, has been in the talking stage or phase for many supervisor and many boards. I heard about it when I first became the fill-in supervisor, and was excited to think that we could take the township to the next level of providing services for our people, whether they're residents or visitors. So Ron and I had quite a few meetings, and manager, and we crunched numbers, and we looked at websites, and we looked at vehicles online, or I did, and we talked cost and expenses and payroll and who's qualified and what licenses do we need and what the legal ramifications are and how do we pay for it. So it's probably been 6 months since we started really getting into this. We can't do anything as far as a specific vehicle until we have approval, starting with this board. Part of that is tonight, to actually go ahead and buy a vehicle. If we get a $30,000 vehicle, it's not going to cost the taxpayers as much as a $60,000. But the availability changes every day, you know, because if one's gonna be a good deal, some township's gonna grab it up pretty quick if they need it. So, the purpose of this public hearing tonight is to give some information to the public as to what this involves, and that's where we're gonna start. Right now, the fire department is funded with taxpayer money. 2.5 mils goes to that course, and it's an assessment. It's not an actual tax. It's handled a little differently. I'm not going to get into that big, long explanation of what that is. Roger can explain it, or Randy, or the chief can too. But the reason we thought this was so appealing was that because, first of all, what triggered it was a huge increase in our medical calls for our fire department. We're up to, I think I heard this morning, somewhere around nearly 80% of our calls are medical calls, somewhere between 75 and 80. That's pretty significant. And again, this is all, it trickles down to who responds, how quickly they respond, whether it's a fire, an accident, a broken bone, a heart attack. There are a lot of different components to how this can be addressed. The thing that got me the most, I think, is if we have an ability to get someone to the hospital sooner than later, let's use that as our impetus for making some decisions. The second thing, of course, is the financial side of it. That's extremely important. What we first started talking about was, you know, how much is this going to cost? How long will it take us to pay for it? And I said, how could we do this if we just did it for 1 year? Can we buy a vehicle and have one tax season pay for it and not have, you know, a commercial loan or any kind of bonding or anything else? Just pay the vehicle off. If we do that, can we sustain whatever expenses we'd incur to have this vehicle? So again, the fire department ran the numbers. We, like I said, we have the people that are trained already. There's no extra education that needs to be done, no extra licensing. We're covered there. We have a number of people who are qualified, so we don't have to hire anybody else. We have the insurance in place, so that part's all taken care of. So in order to equip and buy a vehicle, and then we were looking in that $30,000 to $60,000 range, somewhere in there, because we can get a pretty decent one for that. We don't have to have a brand new $150,000 vehicle. What would it cost the residents? So our calculations showed that somewhere between 0.1 mil and 0.25 could accomplish that. Now, for you as a taxpayer, what does that mean? That sounds like a lot of money. If you have, and taxing is very complicated and it's hard for people to understand, but if you have a $200,000 home and your taxable value is $100,000, okay? If we only increase the millage by 0.1, it's going to cost you $25. It's actually going to cost you $10 for 0.1 one time. Your tax bill would go up $10 one time, 1 year. That's it. If we go up to 0.25, which means right now we have 2.5 mils, it would go to 2.75 1 year, just one time. It's going to cost you $25 one time. So we can pay this vehicle off in 1 year. Or I should say, yes, that would still be right. We can pay it off. We don't have interest. We don't have, you know, amortization or anything. It's just done. Then, the good side of it is the increase that we've been experiencing in all of our calls, we're running to those calls anyway. We don't get reimbursed for that. The taxpayers are paying for that. If we are allowed to transport, now we can bill insurance for that. Aetna or Blue Cross or Provincial or whoever you've got. That will help cover the cost of actually running the ambulance. Now, there's a question, the volume is going to make a difference on whether or not we have, I don't know what the numbers would be, $5,000 income one month and $25 the next, or $200. You know, the volume's going to make a difference. But when you consider somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% of our calls would be billable, now this is money coming in that we didn't even have before, and we still run the calls. There's a significant, or I should say an insignificant time by the time they get the person to the hospital, I mean, because we're right here, and do the reports, and that's it. Supplies, we can bill supplies. So to me, in, you know, my opinion, I'm one of 7, this is a no-brainer, that we can offer a service to the public for a nominal cost up front. And of course, if something were to happen that this ends up costing us tons and tons of money, I don't know how, but we'd probably have to stop it. So I'm all in favor of going forward with a project like this that can be so beneficial not only to our residents, but our visitor, excuse me, our visitors, tourists, anybody staying for the summer. But I think you needed to have that overview because some people I've discussed this with think we're going into the ambulance business. That's not the case. We're doing this for our residents. We have mutual aid agreements with our surrounding communities. That doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean that if somebody on the other side of the Negaunee Township border needs an ambulance, we're not going to go. But how can this not be a good thing, in my mind? So there's a pretty long backup information as to why we're doing this, why we're here, why we're looking for input. And like I said, we have resources for any information if you have questions, but we can take public comment. If anybody'd like to come up and ask some questions or make a statement, feel free. Give us your name, address, and hopefully to 3 minutes if you can do that. Some people can, some people can't. Yes, Randy?
Just detail, since this is a public hearing, it was required to be advertised, and we did advertise it in the Mining Journal. The statute requires one time. We've published it twice, Saturday, May 13th and May 20th. The notice of public hearing did appear in the paper. It was a display ad, so we have complied with the statutory requirements to hold the public hearing.
Thanks. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to give my comments concerning the ambulance service. A little background. Back in the 80s, when I was on the department, UPMS decided to start a medical first responder program. This wasn't the normal medical first responder, which is a very short program. Basically, you're basically learning first aid and that's it. They made it an expanded class that pretty much mirrored the EMT class. The written and practical tests were the same tests as an EMT took. In fact, we had EMTs taking it when we took the test. The only difference being is that EMTs had a much longer clinical time than the medical first responders at the hospital. The department discussed the many advantages to us moving to this type of service, and we came up with the idea that that there was three main things that this would be good for. One, the availability of certified medical personnel to help any of our firefighters in case of an accident or anything on a scene. The second was to have the ability to help EMS in a PI accident where we had to have stabilization of patients and so on. And the third was in case we did arrive prior to the arrival of the ambulance, we had time to basically observe, assess, and try to stabilize the patient before EMS arrived. These expectations, and so it was pretty much decided to do this. So 6 members of the department spent 2 nights a week, plus some Saturdays for 6 months doing this. We took the test, we passed the test, and we were certified medical first responders. Now, the expectations of the department concerning those 3 main areas pretty much have been held in place for the last 30 years. It appears now that we now want to throw something else into this foray or whatever. That now we're going to be sending 2 rigs at a call. We're going to dispatch, Central Dispatch will dispatch EMS Marquette General as well as now Marquette Township. And basically it's a race to get who gets there first, to who gets to load the patient on, the way I'm understanding this. Also the fact that if in case it turns into an ALS type of a run, we'll have to get an ALS a paramedic off of the other rig to come on board to help ours, because basically we are a BLS agency. I did go over Chief DeMarce's things, and it is true in the last 3 years we have seen the increased rate of EMS calls, and I probably could agree that it is 75 to 80% of the calls from Marquette Township is EMS. But I passed out some information that I'd kind of like to go over with you, which actually I feel is a little bit more information. I received from Central Dispatch the basic calls for the first quarter of 2017. I didn't get anything for 14, 15, or 16 because I figured that would take a lot of work. So I just went to and asked for, I received the information for 2017 first quarter, January, February, March. EMS runs with the dispatches for Marquette Township and the dispatches for EMS, and you can tell which ones were Marquette Township because under the primary unit you'll see 2174, 2175, and for Marquette General you'll see 141. So that's all the Marquette General runs. So I took all that and correlated it into a spreadsheet that you'll see that I included. The only thing I didn't add in the spreadsheet was basically the addresses to where the calls were and the type of run, and the only reason I didn't do that is I wouldn't have enough room on my spreadsheet to put that in. So you can basically correlate by just going from the date and the time on this sheet to the ones from the EMS runs to see exactly where you were looking at. So like I said, I did correlate all those in, and you'll see the next sheet I basically did some graphs. The first graph being total runs for time of day. You'll see that 75, the first quarter there was 75 EMS runs. 25 of them were during the working hours, basically, and 50 of them were during non-working hours. Of those 75 runs total, you'll see first on scene basically is, and you'll see that the color MGH is orange. 35 of the total 75 runs, MGH was on scene for 35 of them. And actually there's a mistake in this one. Actually, Marquette Township Fire was actually on scene 30 times. And 10 times for incomplete information. And if you look at the information from from Central Dispatch, you'll see that they actually show times on some of them where it's like 000, which means basically either they was canceled or they did not notify Central Dispatch that they were on scene. So I can't really take any information from that. Working hours on scene. I'm sorry, working hours first on scene. Of the 25 working hours calls, 8 of them Marquette General was on scene first, 15 Marquette Township was on scene first, and 2 again incomplete info because of the fact that we didn't have any information as to when they arrived. I want to just quickly go over the difference between ALS and BLS, and I'm not going to read the whole thing other than the fact that a summary. ALS means advanced life support, and BLS means basic life support. A BLS unit will have 2 emergency medical technicians. On the other hand, an ALS unit will have a paramedic apart from the emergency medical technician. A BLS provider cannot use needles or other devices that make cuts in the skin. The BLS provider cannot administer medicines. On the other hand, an ALS provider can give injections and even administer medication to a patient. An ALS provider can give basic treatment in case of cuts and injuries, where a BLS person does not have the right to do it. Unlike the BLS unit, an ALS unit will be equipped with airway equipment, cardiac life support, cardiac monitors, glucose testing devices. A person with an ALS unit has to undergo more training than a person with a BLS unit. Just the difference between ALS and BLS. You got to realize that Marquette Township is a BLS unit. So, taking that into consideration, the type of runs and that we've had in the 75 runs, 35 of those runs were ALS runs. 16 were BLS runs and 24 were unknown. Now, the only reason I say they're unknown is the fact that if you look at the, again, go back to central dispatches, you'll see something like sick person. Now, you really can't say from that description, sick person could be having a heart attack for all we know, or a sick person could go into a seizure for all we know. So I really can't include that in because it's an unknown. So the only way you're going to find that is if you go back and actually go to each one of those runs, get the information from MGH or whatever to find out exactly what that, whether they were transported. Working hour type of runs. Of the working hour times of the 24 particular runs, 11 of them were ALS, 5 were BLS, and again 9 were unknown because we don't, again it goes to sick person, so I couldn't really tell you what that, you wouldn't really know until the arrival on scene, from what your information I got. So basically I think just going through that information, my basic concern is that we're kind of wasting our resources by actually sending out an MGH ambulance that is equipped with ALS to a call where if we arrive first and we want to load this person on, if this person's having a heart attack or whatever, onto our rig, take off with that rig, not being able to administer any medications or actually do anything other than monitor with the AED and shock and give CPR. That's basically all we can do. If by some chance we happen to come close up to the ambulance coming in from the other way, from my understanding is we're going to stop. We got to get a guy out, the paramedic out of that ambulance. He's got to grab his drug bag, everything else, and jump into our rig and now work on that patient. To me, if I'm going to have somebody pick up me, and if I'm having a heart attack, I would definitely like to have an ALS rig that has all the equipment to handle my problem. I don't want to be stuck in a BLS rig and race like heck to get to the hospital before I die. I think if you also, and by the way, if you also look at that spreadsheet, if you look at the last page under the one section, and you'll see it on the bottom where it says the last 2 columns are the response times, and I took an average of the response times from the time of page, the actual time on scene, and it came up with Marquette General's average response time to an on-scene call is 8 minutes and 24 seconds. Marquette Township's average call was 7 minutes and 6 seconds. So for the 1 minute, I do not see any reason, and I understand what you're saying, it's only going to cost me $25, but somehow or another I can think of a lot more better places we can put $58,000 in this township than ambulance, if you look at the fact that who gets on scene first isn't going to pay for itself. In fact, we're going to lose money on the deal. You keep saying that we got 80% of our calls is EMS. We're not going to necessarily get those 80 calls. You're not going to transport every one of those calls. If Marquette General gets there first, they're going to transport. And as you see, that's something that happens. Again, Marquette General was more equipped to handle any medical emergencies than we were going to be equipped to handle it. I see absolutely no reason to go through this. We did discuss this at one time, us going into the ambulance service. And it was basically when there was the unknown with Duke Life Point whether they were going to drop their ambulance service or not. And Manager Gerard, as well as Chief Sims at that time, as well as Dennis Limita, sat with the EMS provider, and he said, there is no way you're going to make any money. You're going to lose money every time. I sat down with a man from downstate who was is in charge of 8 different townships. He said he has a ambulance service. He says, he told me, if you can't get 800 calls a year, you're going to lose money. And 800 calls is just breaking even. I'm sorry, this makes absolutely no sense for you to spend my money on this. And I think the other thing I didn't realize until getting into this farther is the first 2 times this millage came up, it was a voted millage. The voters got to vote on this millage. The 3rd time it came up, it was actually voted on by the board. Voters didn't have any say in it. And now what you're doing is you're going to actually increase this millage again with no say from the township residents. I think that's a big mistake. I think you need to look at all the information that you're getting, not just the fact that we are increasing our EMS runs. Again, to send out 2 different services to the same run as a race to see who's going to get there first, just so you could get transportation. Basically, you're right. We're not having an ambulance service. We're having a cab service. That's all we're doing, which makes absolutely no sense. For the past 30 years, the residents of this township received the help they needed from us because it was included in a 2.5 mils. That is a part of the fire department. Now you want to raise it for what? To have somebody just transport you to a hospital and hope you're going to make enough money in the first year to cover this? Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else wish to comment? This is your opportunity to speak out or ask questions.
Reggie Durant, 2523 US Highway 41. I have a business in the township, and I was looking at the cost of the ambulance service to my business. And it looks like on the high end, it might only be $185 one time. I should spend that much at Starbucks in a year, probably more. But I have a sense, and I kind of feel it in my bones, that this is a good thing, you know. In my case, I know of 2 family members that I've requested ambulance for. In the end, they were not serious conditions, but they would have required, or it would have allowed the township to bill for them because of their medical coverage that they carried. So I see that as a good thing. I don't, you know, I heard all the acronyms, and I'm not going to try to repeat them, but I sense in my bones this is a good thing because it expands our department. It's an accountable service. You know, we know that these guys are going to do a good job, and we can hold them accountable. And then down the road, yeah, maybe right now, within the first year, we may not be up to the level where we can do, you know, treat patients with medications and drugs and so on. But I'm sure some of the guys would want to develop advanced life support. So I'm all for it. And I know on certain nights, there's hundreds of extra people living in the township. They come in and stay at hotels. On some weekends, there might be another 500 on top of that, hundreds of people. So there's calls all over. And I support what they're doing. I'm not too worried about them, you know, not making money. You break even, that's okay with me, but it's a great service, and, you know, I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Reg.
Robert Sims, 2062 Montgomery. First of all, what happens to this, everything that's spent in a year from now if it doesn't work? What are you know, and do you have a final number of what this is going to cost minus the ambulance with equipment wise? Because you're going to have to buy at least 2 cots and supplies for the ambulance. All right. Third thing is, you said, you know, you have enough personnel right now. Well, you just had an ad in the paper looking for a firefighter EMT. Okay. Have you received any applications for that? It's hard enough to get a firefighter as it is before you get an EMT even. Okay. Right now, my understanding, you have 11 personnel that are trained. 5 of those personnel live in the city. Reggie brought it up, summer coming up, people are leaving. All right, before that rig leaves the building, you gotta have 2 EMTs on. And it's just not, like right now they can go in the truck, help out, and go back. Not, when you get this rig, these guys are gonna have to go there. If they transport, and if somebody calls for an ambulance, they can ask for Marquette General and cancel the township. So if they do go, these guys are gonna have to come back, clean that rig, fill out that report. So, and what happened that for a half hour, now they're gonna be there, depending on how bad it was, 2 hours. And you also gotta look at the additional costs for laundry facilities, linens. You know, you're taking business away from the hospital. They're not gonna give this to you. You know, you take a look at chocolate. The size of that area and the size of that population. You know, they don't even have first responders. If they're needed by the EMS will call them. And this is the way it was set up for the township years ago. If EMS needed the fire department, they would call. I don't think at any time it was brought up that under our millage, we could respond to an EMS call. Is that right, Ron?
Well, Ron's got a presentation, Bob. He can answer some of
Alright.
these.
I just watched a board meeting for Traverse City, May 22nd, or May 24th budget meeting. They were talking about going with an ambulance. The manager told them, you have to do a long, hard study, and it's not worth it. He said it wouldn't even be worth the time to do the study. And if you go to the Traverse City Council meeting, May 24th at 2:33, you can hear it all. So they voted it down. You know, we're getting good service from the hospital now. And if you look at Dan's charts, but one thing you gotta take in consideration, within a half a mile of the fire hall, there've been, you know, at least 24 calls. And during the day, that's when they are. That's why they're beating, you know, the times are different. You took those calls out, it's a whole different number. So, you know, I'm asking, you know, my opinion, this isn't worth the cost to the township. And it's not worth the, you know, if you have 2 guys during the day on the ambulance out someplace, or the 3 guys, you know, if they all go, who's gonna be at the hall for fire? You know, #1 priority of this department was for fire. And that's the way it reads in millage. Doesn't read fire ambulance. It says fire protection, fire prevention. And that has never been changed. And I went down to the courthouse and talked to the people down there, and every other township who runs an ambulance service, that money comes from the general fund or a separate millage, not from the fire fund. And I've been trying to get that straightened out for years. It hasn't been done. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Tom Driscoll, 2212 here on the street. Heard a lot of good information. Glad some people dug into this a little bit. Hear a lot about why we think we should get an ambulance. Haven't heard anybody here say why we need one.
This is your chance to speak, Tom.
So,
You're first.
You said, well, we're not in the ambulance business. Well, that's what you'll be doing. Somebody has to do the billing, somebody has to do the maintenance. You have to run it like a business. Who's gonna do the billing? Who's gonna chase the insurance companies? Who's gonna chase the people that can't pay? We already have a reliable EMS service for the township. I see no reason why we're going into this. First to arrive at the scene. You know, like you said, we're gonna race there, and then who's gonna make the decision whether this person needs advanced life support, or he can go in the basic, life support ambulance? Who's making that decision? You want our guys to be the ones to make that decision? What if they make the wrong decision? Who's gonna be liable? Not qualified to transport all the patients. So are you really doing a service? You get into this, and after a while, is Marquette General even gonna show up? Well, Marquette Township has their own ambulance service. Why are we gonna waste our resources and lose money on that? So are they only gonna show up after a while? We need advanced life support, so now you're not doing a good service to that person. Who's gonna absorb the cost of the loss if there is one? I've heard comments in the paper from the board members or the manager. It's break even at best. There's no money to be made here. Like the fire department past members said, it was established with the 3 criteria. They do a good job at that. Let them do what they're trained at and what they're qualified for, and let the people that are qualified beyond that do their job. Their job is to be the first responders, make the scene safe, and assist that person until the qualified people can arrive. That's their job. I don't mind paying the $25, but I was born and raised here. I lived here most of my life. I moved out to Nagani Township, moved back here 8 years ago, and I've never seen so much money being spent in the last 8 years in my whole life in a township. Money's going everywhere. Now you want to put more money out there, and it's all at the cost of the taxpayers. I'll give you $25 right now for every one of you can look me in the eye and tell me that this will never cost me another penny. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else wish to comment?
You do have 2 written comments.
Anybody else wish to comment? Okay. The closing public comment for this public hearing. Randy, did you want to read those into the record?
I can. I just have the one. I don't have Mr. Shelby's unless Randy has that. But I have Mr. Kaufman's, and I'll read that. Marquette Township missing a vital tool. The township has a well-trained and experienced staff, has the responsibility, and lacks only one vital tool, an ambulance. There is clearly a need with medical calls on the rise. Approval of this acquisition would certainly enhance the medical response time not only for the township residents, but for all those traveling through the township on busy Highway 41. A township ambulance would ensure an additional source of revenue, which would help offset the EMS service, which currently receives little or nothing for mandated emergency response. We urge the board to vote for the good of the township and vote yes on the ambulance acquisition. Sincerely, Peter and Audrey Kaufman. And the other written correspondence that we have received is in July of last year, I had sustained a fall and was unable to move due to back pain. My husband called 911, and in very short time, members of the fire department arrived and assisted ambulance people in helping me into a vehicle and travel to the ER. I am remiss in not having written to thank the men who came to help. They were professional, kind, and caring. I fully support the increase in funding for this worthwhile department. Thank you, Gene Whitman Shelby. Two that we received.
Hey, thanks. Ron, do you want to give your presentation? I think you have a PowerPoint. You didn't do that?
Well, I did get it on the
Yeah,
email, and I
thought
can
Randy
put it
had
up
it.
there for you, Ron. Let me do that here.
Once Randy gets it up there, this will just be a review of what the board received, which is basically the hard copy printout of the PowerPoint.
And start, Ron, if I can, hopefully I can get it up there. I saw it somewhere, and I can't. Oh, here it is. There we go.
Yeah, it should be right up there by the message.
And I think, Ron, most of, if I remember your presentation, it's going to answer all of the questions that came up, I'm pretty sure.
In the clicker there, Ron, is right there. Okay.
Just got the stick.
Well, it's I think it's the same one. It just isn't in color, unless you want it in color. But
Doesn't look like it went into much for enlargement of the presentation. You can just see, these are just stats that we compiled, total call volume by the year, and I don't think it's a newsflash to anybody that our call volume has gone up steadily over the years in the township. And our next one, EMS responses by year, EMS assist only. You can see, again, obviously as the township is growing, so as our run volume is going as well. Percentage of calls that are EMS, and unfortunately, it's so small that I don't think you can see, but it's gone up significantly. We've had 60 runs in 2001. We peaked in 2015 at a little over 70% of the runs of the department were EMS. Call volume has increased with the growth of the township. We've increased 550% increase in call volume, that's total call volume, since 2000. We've actually been responding to medical emergencies since the 1980s. However, data is not on the computer that long back. It's all in hard copy records that are stored in our offsite storage, and we really didn't have the time to dig through. So, it's there, but we've been, to go back and try to develop spreadsheet data on that, would have taken just an inordinate amount of time. Call volume is obviously going to expect it to increase, expected growth in the township, commercial, residential, and then obviously the baby boomers are now increasing in age. The trend obviously is continuing. EMS response by the month for 2017 so far. January, it made up 88% of our total run volume of that month. February, it was 95%. March was 79%. April, 78%. And then May was 64%. The year-to-date average is already 81% run volumes. This next one is just a breakdown. You can see we're at 81. The breakdown here of EMS responses over a 4-year period. Rescue assist, medical assist, obviously is always going to be our primary. And then EMS assist at accidents where we end up with multiple victims, and the fire EMS people will end up helping EMS people. Extrication is an EMS or is more of a fire rescue event, I guess, than an extrication, or than an EMS type thing. And then swimming rescues. We had a couple in 2016, 2015, and then back into 2014 to 13. And we looked at the EMS reimbursement, and we know, obviously, that we're not going to bill for the ALS supplies. We do, contrary to what some people think, we do administer Buterol. We can administer Narcan in a drug overdose. And in fact, we just had a very successful EMS run where we were on scene with the patient for 24 minutes and had to administer an albuterol treatment, and we were able to turn her asthmatic attack around and stabilize her until we were able to get her transported. So we do, you know, we are able to monitor cardiac, we are able to defibrillate, we are able to put down airways, oral airways, and combi tubes. So the basic EMS toolbox to work out of, I guess, for lack of better, has increased significantly over the years. And as they keep trying these more advanced procedures in the field in the basic level, I would expect that would continue. You're looking at the next one on the slide we got, just looks at some of the base calls, and we aimed low on this, and again, this is really not about making money on this service, making a large amount of money. We hope to offset some of our costs that we are incurring anyway every day when we run these EMS calls. So, and I apologize that we're not able to get it up any larger, but there is, you know, the board members all have this data that they can look at. And we tried to be, again, fairly conservative. We have no way of guesstimating how many times we'll transport versus how many times EMS will transport, how many times we'll have EMS on board, and we'll still be able to transport in some of the billable consumables. So, going back to trying to get some past history, so we, instead of just having a high year, we tried to average that whole mean out to try to give us a little bit more realistic. And you can see we're looking at in 2015, you know, we look at Blue Cross billing, we look at Medicare and Medicaid, trying to average it out, trying to average out the miles, to try to come up with the most realistic figures we could. And then 4-year average anticipated loaded mileage revenue, we're looking at 3,831 in mileage. We're looking at 45, 43 in total, looking at, you know, your 6% billing fee, and that's brings it down to 42,712. And we fully know that billing is a critical aspect of this. We never intended to bill. All these figures take into account a billing company out of Lower Michigan that specializes in medical billing. It's an extremely complex system to get all your reimbursements. They're gonna load, if we go in this direction, they will load the software on a computer. We enter the report, then they import it into their billing system, and they maximize the return that we can get out of it. And they pursue the billing account for us. Non-emergent transfer reimbursements, there's your Medicaid, obviously, and Medicare are considerably less than with the Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and some of the other major medical providers. Mileage is the same as for emergency traffic. And that's pretty much all I have.
Can you talk about the hospital EMS, how 141 works and the calls, and kind of explain it to the public?
Well,
who gets called, who's going to get called off, how that works?
First of all, if they're going to send a BLS unit or an ALS unit or a BLS and ALS unit, it's based on the call and how the operator perceives the emergency and the need for ALS. You'll, you know, a couple times today, a BLS ambulance went out in one of the townships without ALS, and the rest of the time they were ALS on board as well. So a lot of that, how those two agencies are or are not dispatched is purely a matter of how that call is taken by the operator, how they perceive that emergency, and whether if it's a cardiac, obviously if it's a cardiac arrest, if it's a respiratory arrest, that's a high priority. They're going to send both the BLS and the ALS unit. If it's a sick person, high fever, you know, wanting transport to the hospital, that's going to be a BLS transport. It's
a subjective thing based on the information that the operator, the 911 operator is able to get out of the individual.
So is there a chance they'll both just show up, or does Marquette
No,
Township get
They
called?
tone it out. I mean, if they're gonna tone out both agencies, that's what they'll do. They'll tone out Marquette General and Marquette Township at the same time. They'll page us. We call it tone out. If it's a BLS only call, they're gonna tone out the Township Fire Department. And the ALS, we always have the discretion if we get there and we feel that that patient is deteriorating beyond the services we can provide, we simply pick up the radio and call Central Dispatch and ask them to send an ALS rig to intercept, and we can start transporting at that time. Or if it's more prudent to stay there with the patient, we'll stay at the residence and wait for the ALS rig to come.
So tell us about some of the calls this week that have happened, just examples of you
Well,
responding.
We've had a half a dozen calls in the last end of the week and through the weekend. I guess the most notable call that we had was a respiratory, an asthmatic, and it was just the circumstances at that time. They had the only ambulance that was available was dispatched out of Ishpeming for it. And we were on scene with the patient, I think around 20 minutes, Rob? 22 minutes. And we gave an albuterol treatment to the patient, stabilized the patient, and simply waited for EMS to get there and transport.
When you could have transported, and they would have been to the hospital
Well,
probably
that
18 minutes
That was a
sooner.
case, and again, you know, we would have been in contact with the ER, because when you're doing primary patient care, in a case like that where it's a prolonged, we could have called the ED, talked to the doc on duty, said, this is what we had, this is what we've done, we stabilized her, she's able to breathe, you know, adequately now, she's calmed down. Do you want us to transport at this point, or do you want to wait for an ambulance? He is medical control. He can authorize the transport. He can tell them, you know, stay there and wait. So every call is different. You know, we run everything from broken toes to, you know, to cardiac arrest and respiratory arrest to drug overdoses. And it's part of the routine.
And there's a limited number of ambulances, obviously, in the county. The hospital has, I don't know, 6 I saw out there the last time I went by. They were all plugged in and running and charging. And some of the individual communities have their own. So the other part about the hospital side is that they use theirs for transport, which we could also do if we had residents who were incapacitated to a point and needed to get to the hospital just for transport. We can do that, correct, and bill
Yeah,
the
you
insurance.
have patients that go in for dialysis or whatever that are too weak to be transported, or they don't have the family or ability to transport. And that would fall under a BLS transport and a service that we would plan to offer to the residents, certainly.
And then the other side too is if the hospital or any of the other communities are doing a transport, say to Ann Arbor or somewhere, you might have 1 or 2 ambulances out of the county, and, you know, our residents might have to wait from one to come from Gwynn or West Ishpeming or something like that. So that was the other part of this that I thought was a real advantage. When we know there'll be ambulances at any given time out of the area, that just gives the whole county one more.
There's no doubt there's been an increase, and the hospital has adjusted staffing and hours to accommodate it, but they're just, I think everybody thought it was just one of those anomalies, a surge that was gonna settle back down, but in the last 1.5 to 2 years, there just seems to be a steady increase in the amount of run volumes. It's just, I don't have an explanation talking to EMS staff. You know, there's no real rhyme or reason. More residents,
More people.
more tourists, more travelers. I don't
Aging
know why.
community.
It has increased. I mean, the stats show it. EMS's run volumes, Marquette General EMS has gone up substantially for the last 3 years, so.
Okay, yes, board members, let's ask Ron some questions. Pete?
Ron, where did you find out about this company, the billing company?
Well, it's no secret. I mean, Marquette General sends its billing out. I mean, EMS billing is an extremely complex difficult. You know, you need the tools, you need experienced people that know how to interpret the codes and get the maximum reimbursement out of that run. And every time we called around downstate, we kept hearing about this MHR billing, and it so happened, I called down there to talk to the individual, and she was going to Iron Mountain to set up the local ambulance services billing software for him. So she was kind enough, she came down and met with us for an hour or two there, and you know, basically explained how she would set it, how they would come in, set up the software in our computers, and then we would enter the raw patient data, and it goes down to her office, and then she's got a team of people that their whole job is to maximize the billing return for you. I don't think there's an ambulance, whether it's Gwin or any, I don't think there's a small ambulance service anywhere that tries to do their own medical billing. It's just too complex. And they'll take 3 to 5% of the percent of that call to offset their costs.
John, you had a question?
Yeah, well, not a question, no. I have a statement. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. This is about the third time that we've in-depth studied this issue, maybe more. And I think we're on the cusp of being able to add an emergency service for our citizens at a relatively small cost. All of the concerns that are expressed about doing it, we have come to the understanding that there's no way in the world that we're going to make money on this. We've accepted, I think, that we're going to lose money. And I think that's something we can accept and do it proudly, because it's a service that we're adding. That's the thing that needs to be looked at more than anything else. It's an additional service. We're going to try it, and it may not work. But I think we're going to try it because we feel an obligation to do something at a very economical price to our taxpayers that might be of use, and God knows we might even save a life. And I think people need to think about that. We're not asking people for hardship in tax. We're talking about $25 or $30, or a business person who's talking about maybe $100 or $200. Every bit of those dollars are worth it if it adds something that's a service to your people. I respect the concerns that have been offered for us to think about. But I'm convinced that the good thought everybody will share, everybody that's even expressed their comments tonight, is that if this works out and it's a good thing, we'll be proud of it in 6 or 8 months, not looking for some way to get back out of it. And the other side of it is that people need to keep in mind that we're not locked into this. If a year from now this is not working, we'll treat it like anything else. Don't forget, that ambulance is still worth something. You haven't lost it all if you have to sell it again. I think that this is a service that we need to consider. It's a service that we can offer at a very low cost. And I think that the thought that's gone into this has been extensive, and I urge my fellow board members to vote for this and give it a try.
Dan?
I concur with John. I'm definitely in favor of this. I guess maybe what we should do is go back to 1977 before we started a fire department. You know, the township was contracted out by the city of Marquette. Why don't we go back to that? We move forward. We have to move forward. We can't get stagnant and do nothing. Back in the 80s, when we started doing EMS runs, why did we do them? We did them for the service of our people. This is just another example of how we can move forward and provide a better service for our people. And I think it's very important. As Ron explained, we had that run, and I don't know if Dan Pompo got these results from Central, of how often we have to wait for an ambulance. It's becoming more and more and more often that we have to wait 6, 8, 10, in that case 22 minutes to get an ambulance there to transport that woman to the hospital. So that's all I've got.
Hang on, Pete, you had a question. Go ahead, Ernie.
Listening to everyone, I think lots and lots of good information have been presented here today. And one thing I brought up when we first talked about this, how can we get the necessary data to cover look at our costs for it and look at our revenue, so that we have a full year of this. And at that point in time, we're gonna have to make some decisions. If our costs get way out of line versus revenue, it's no longer feasible to do it. I think John brought up a good point. It is a service to our people within the township, and that's why we're here. That's why we're elected here, to do what we think is right for the individuals within the township and that. I have some personal experiences, and I should have taken an ambulance, but I drove myself. I got a call from our fire chief and EMS director 2 days after I was at the hospital giving me hell because I didn't call them so they could take care of it. So I had a heart attack, I drove myself to the hospital and that, which is stupid, but at the time I felt good and that. So, a couple other times I have to talk about my wife in the ambulance. Had to two or three times she had to take an ambulance and that. And I would have to say that Township Fire Department was there first, and then the ambulance came afterwards, and the decision was made to take it by ambulance to go to the hospital and that too. But these are things that have happened in that. I have to say, 2 weeks ago, I was back in the hospital for a few days and that, and again, I drove myself rather than making a call for someone and that, and I'm catching hell from everybody for that too at the same time. But these are things that you're gonna find that people do things stupid things and that, and I can see some good use for this. Looking at dollars all the time and figures all the time and that, I think we have to look at it for 1 year. And as John brought up, and my notes say that we do have a value there in whatever vehicle we get. So if we decide in a year that it's no longer feasible to do it, we do have a value setting there. There's gonna be some costs in there, and we have to make sure we cover them all and we document them. As they said, for all the articles that we have to use within the ambulance and that, time and everything, that all has to be documented. So we have a good feel at the end of the year what it's gonna cost us to run this service and that. So as of right now, I think I have to agree with Trustee Marks here, is that this is a service for the people of the township and that. We wanna give it a try and see if it will be feasible to do it and that. Cost factors, we know the basic cost factors will be an increase of a 0.15 to a 0.25, something like that. We don't know for sure. There'll be some other costs we're not aware of in that. But I'll be honest with you, if we can put in an underpass and it's gonna cost us $1,000 to $1,500 a year to maintain it and that, I think we can spend something like this for our citizens for emergency purposes and that, and go that route and that. So that's what I look at this point in time. So that's all.
Pete?
I was thinking on the same line about our fire department. You know, we're being so close to Marquette. We're putting out police protection for our residents. We got public works department, and nobody knows what's gonna happen on with the hospital. If we're saying if we can break even, well, in the real world, when you're for profit, they're not gonna have no ambulance service at the hospital if they can't make good money on it. It's just not gonna happen. So I think, you know, we've tried lots of things. We fixed their roads. The residents voted to fix their roads for their residents because they were bad. And I think we have to do this for 1 year just to try it. I think it'd be a great service to our community, and I'm all for it.
Anybody else? No? Okay, Randy.
Well, I did have a chat with one resident, and he was concerned about the ambulance, that we were getting into the ambulance business. And I assured him we weren't. I said it was going to be a BLS, a basic life. And I said, you know, basically like my cohorts here, I said, we're going to try this for a year or two. And if it's not working out, we'll probably just go the other way. And it's not like Trustee or Treasurer Johnson said. We do have some value there. If this doesn't work out, I mean, we got a vehicle sitting there, and we can sell it. And right now, every medical call we go on, we get nothing. We absolutely get nothing. If we get $1, that's more than we're getting now. And if we save one life, that's worth a lot of money. It's not, or I should say it's worth more than money. We save one life with this. So I agree with the rest of my board members. I think this is a service we can, an essential service that if we can provide it, we should. And hopefully, you know, moving forward, hopefully it works out and we continue it, so.
Thanks, Randy. Anything, Dan? Dave? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, my only comment would be that I think this is a pretty inexpensive opportunity to try out a service that could be a significant value to the residents, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't take advantage of it.
I'd like to hear from our manager and legal also. Some of the questions that came up affect staffing and personnel and the legal side of the assessment, and so whichever of you wants to.
Well, I think the residents need to understand and recognize that this is not a subject that was raised by staff. This was a subject that the board raised earlier this year and directed staff to compile some data and bring it back to you, which we did in April. We brought that to you first in April. At that time, it was very clearly stated that we do not anticipate this to be a money-making venture. We clearly stated that time and time again. This is not about money. It's about, can it be done at a reasonable cost, because it is viewed as a service as opposed to an obligation, an expansion of our service level. So I just wanted to be clear about that. There's been a lot of talk about spending money. This township does spend money. Look around you. We have good roads, we have good infrastructure, we have good facilities. Yes, we spend money. And communities around us don't, and look at them. So yeah, this township does spend money. We don't have a serious crime problem, but we spend $160,000 a year for police protection. We provide a vehicle that comes out of the general fund. I don't view this myself as any different than that. This is an expansion of a service. We've been progressive. We look forward. We look to the future. It's been in the strategic plan, and this is the direction that this township has gone. Certainly with challenge in the past. Not everybody has been on board with being progressive or going forward. We've run into that a number of times, but typically this board has moved forward, and we are still moving forward. With regard to staffing, we do have staff. We're doing the service now. We've been doing the service. All we're talking about is adding a transport capability. That's it. So, from a cost standpoint, where the figures are coming from, the $30,000 to $60,000, there are ambulances out there that we've looked at. We've been researching. That run between $30,000 and $60,000, and that's where the 0.1 to 0.25 mil comes from. It will depend on what this board is interested in spending. Will tell us what that millage will be. If you tell us that you don't want to levy any more than 1 mil, we'll be looking at something in the 30,000 range, fully equipped. If you want to go to the 0.25, then we'll be looking at something in the $60,000 range, equipped, which means maybe a $30,000 ambulance with equipment. So, these are all things we've looked at. I don't want the impression to be given out there that we don't do our research. We do. We've been in and out of this subject for several years, and the board renewed that earlier this year. So we've done our research. We have the answers. I understand the information that came from Central Dispatch and everything else. You can package it in any number of ways. Bottom line is our use is going up. Our demand is going up. It has been historically. All the 15 years I've been here, it's increased every year. And it's going to continue to. Ron's absolutely right. Look around this room. What's the average age in here? simple as that. You know, the demand is going to increase. The majority of our calls are age-related. They're trip and falls, they're slip and falls, they're breathing issues, they're age-related issues, other than the traffic accidents that occur on the highway. And the most recent one we just had was 8 minutes. Our guys were there before an ambulance arrived. They could have been at the hospital within 3. So, you know, these are the reasons that the Township Board has looked at this. It's purely a service like any other service that we provide. You know, it's the reason we came to the residents and asked, do you want your roads fixed? It'll cost you 1.5 mils for 15 years. They said yes, because they want good roads. I think they want good health care too. So, that's my 2 cents worth.
Roger, whatever you want to add.
I don't have a lot to add because much of the discussion is whether you should or you shouldn't, which isn't a legal question. It's a political question, and I don't weigh in on. I'm not a voting board member. However, just a couple of points of clarification. The source of the funding is not a tax. It is a special assessment. There are a few differences between a tax and a special assessment. A special assessment, in this instance, is across the entire township, but that is raised under Act 33 or MCL 41.801, right in the statute that discusses township expenditures for police, fire, and other types of equipment. There are, I know that you do have an opinion from an attorney through the Michigan Township Association in terms of the nuances of how to put this together, and there are a number of townships in other areas in the Lower Peninsula that do handle their funding of their ambulance service through their fire department and through an Act 33 expenditure of this nature. It's deemed to be equipment, it's deemed to be fire department equipment if it's done through the fire department, and that's essentially the mechanism. One difference, if you just in special assessments in general, the fire department is already funded by a special assessment of not more than 2.5 mils annually, and the process is different from a tax in this respect, that the taxes, such as the library's funding, gets rolled back each year by the Headley Amendment. That's a constitutional provision, whereas a special assessment, when it is a multi-year assessment, as is with the fire department now for the regular funding, does not get rolled back by Headley. Another difference with a special assessment versus a tax is that the Township Board should be analyzing each year what the expenses will be for the purpose of the funds being needed in the upcoming year, and then levy that amount. And in this case, at present, it's not to exceed 2.5 mils, but if we've got all new equipment and we've got very low operating expenses, none of which are reality in any fire department in this day and age, but if that were to be the case, you could assess a much lower amount. It's a maximum cap that you have. So it's very different in many respects from a tax, even though at the end of the day, writing the check out of the checkbook costs just like it does for a tax. But from a legal perspective, the difference in which a tax versus a special assessment are handled are very different. Unless there are any specific questions from the legal aspect of it, I'm not sure I had anything terribly enlightening to add.
Ernie, go ahead.
I think a couple of comments, indirect comments, was we have a 2.5 right now. For us to increase it, can we as a board increase that without a vote of the people? Can you
Yes.
respond to that?
Yes, you can. A special assessment is basically, once it's voted in, you may have an election on it, but that's an assessment that could, in theory, be in perpetuity, could be forever. So once it's voted in, you do not need to keep having elections to renew that. But yes, you can change the amount of your, in this manner.
And I think right now it's set up through 2022, isn't it? Wasn't it like a 20-year or something?
Yes, correct.
So We could choose
It
to
was
do
renewed in
something this year,
2008.
next year, or wait till '22. Anything else for legal or manager or comments?
Just that, we know it's a special assessment, and we know that that special assessment ends up as a bill to the taxpayer. We know that. But we've got the legal version of it. We know it's a special assessment, but we also are very much aware that this is a cost that will be expensed by the taxpayer. But it's a rather small one, and this body, and the body that preceded it, to answer some of the comments that have been made, we make mistakes, sure we do. But we try very hard, and I think this is one time that we're being successful in getting something in it. It's a rather low expense to the ratepayer. And I urge the board to go ahead with it.
Roger, if I may, I think this is my first public hearing, so I want to make sure process-wise what we have to do. We close the public hearing. Do we need to put this on the agenda now to take a vote? Can we take a motion now to direct maybe the fire department to do something, or staff, or?
Well, you don't have an agenda item
That's what I
per se
mean. It needs
at
to
this
be an
point, and to
agenda
amend your agenda, that should have technically happened at the beginning of your
No, that's okay.
of your
Just- we
meeting
just
if you
wanted
wanted to
have
do
the
that. Just
discussion and
just
allow
as a
public.
point of order.
I just want to make
essentially.
sure.
The point you're at now is you've had your public hearing, you close the public hearing, then you take the information to decide what direction you want to give staff.
Okay, so we can
You
put
know,
it on the
and it
next.
could be on the next agenda, it could be January 1st, it could be whatever you deem it to be, if you opt to go forward in this process. Understanding and recognizing clearly that there are going to be those in favor and those not in favor. It's a question for the board to decide at this point whether you want to provide the service and at what level.
Okay, thanks. All right, then I'm closing the public hearing at 8:34. And we can proceed with the rest of the agenda. Unfinished business, road project update. 11.
Oh, Mark is here. Okay.
Yeah, Mark is actually later on down the agenda. You're actually later on the agenda. Those are the two items we added down on,
Oh, I didn't know.
in new business.
You didn't want me to update them on the bids?
Actually, that's an agenda item down that we added.
All right.
Yeah, I guess if there was going to be an update right now, it would be where are we in terms of commencing this year's project?
Yeah, that's all I was planning on doing. As far as this project, for the 2017, we got the bids last Wednesday. You'll see they're on item 12H, is it?
Correct.
Okay. And we've received bids from Baco and Payne and Dolan. Baco was 1.19 million, roughly. Payne and Dolan, 1.36 million. You'll see for item 12H, we recommended Baco. The board approves it. We plan to have a pre-construction meeting this Thursday to discuss the schedule and possibly start next week or the following week.
Okay, good. I guess that's what I want to get to the board basically, is where we are with the project as opposed to awarding the bid or doing those things, which are on item 12H now.
Yep.
Cool.
What up?
Thanks, Mark. And I wasn't sure because the letter in here talking about the project is 11-1, so that's why I didn't know we were gonna add 12, because I figured we were talking about it now, so we'll just keep that. Anything, oh yeah, I was just gonna say anything, Dave.
Just an update on, I distributed just now, and it was in your board packet, and the reason I had to redistribute it tonight was it's in color, so you can see where the changes are. And we've been updating this. This is the received resident complaints with respect to the road rehabilitation projects over the last 2 years. This was updated June 1st, and just a couple highlights. We had a issue on 2243 Montgomery that was in last month's report, but as of this date, it's been resolved. They replaced the collection basin and the drain pipe that was inadvertently removed, and that issue over there is resolved. It took care of his water problem. That, for those of you that might remember the conversation at the last meeting, the culvert going through the driveway and the catch basin that was associated with it were removed by the Baco Contracting last year. The gentleman had significant amounts of water piled up in his side yard alongside of his driveway to the tune of 3 to 6 inches on any given day. It didn't matter if it rained or not. The ditch, or the catch basin that was reinstalled by Baco, and the drain tile that was put over the road ditch took care of the water standing there within 30 minutes after they were installed. You could stand there and watch the water go down. So that issue has been fixed. It has yet to be where the asphalt was cut out and the damage was caused in the gentleman's driveway was put on the 2017 road rehab project. When they get their asphalt running, they'll take care of that patch, and the owner's fine with that. The other problem we had is an ongoing problem right now. It's at 195 Brookton Road, and it's part of the road rehab that was done on South Vandenboom. And essentially what we had before we did South Vandenboom is we had all the water pooling in the residence yard on the southwest side of South Vandenboom in Brookton. And as soon as we replaced the culvert, it now all comes over to the southeast side of Brookton and runs into the gentleman's garage, across the front of the house, around the east side and down into a collection basin on the back side, and it's causing significant damage. I had some discussions with Marquette County Road Commission. They agreed that it was time to clean the drainage ditch out. That is currently, as of today, I talked to Mr. Tavola, and he said that Miss Dig is going to be out there this week, and they'll do the work next week. Associated with that is the biggest concern was that we were going to have to replace the culvert in the driveway. I did a little hand digging in there, and I found a perfectly usable concrete culvert that has been covered up and plugged up for years. So as soon as we get that opened up, the water will vacate into a collection basin on the back side of the property without causing all the damage. The last problem I have to bring to the board's attention is a problem I'm not sure how to address or even how to recommend that we address it. It's at 135 South Vandenboom, and it's a typical problem that we've gotten calls about. And since we've done the road and put the bit curbs in, the sand over the winter collects along the edge of the road, along the bit curb, and the first half a dozen rains that come through wash all the sand down the bit curb, and it exits into the first area that's lower than the road, which is unfortunately a driveway. And this sand is exited onto his driveway surface, and there's a couple inches in there. I think this is going to happen every year, and I don't think there's a resolution to it unless you can find a way to sweep the sand up before the first rain. So I'm not sure what to recommend, and he's not the only gentleman with this problem. Every place where we've got the bit curb to keep the drainage water on the road until we can exit it in an appropriate spot carries that sand and down to where the collection basins are. It's just a fact of keeping the water from running into the yards. And all along, the objective of this whole road rehab project was to not. We knew that we didn't have the budget to fix all the drainage issues, but our hope was that we could complete this project without making any of the drainage issues worse. And I think we've done that quite successfully. I don't think you're going to be able to resolve this type of issue unless you send a crew out to sweep up the sand every spring.
Kind of like the road commission is supposed to do.
Yeah, except we'd have to make a detour into some driveways. And unfortunately, and I guess I've never seen so many residences that are constructed below the grade of the road and driveways that run significantly below the grade of the road to the tune of 2 or 3 feet before they get to the driveway. And we've tried to address those with UPEA. We've tried to leave the bit curb, not reduce it at the driveway, to keep that in the roadway. And that's been very successful, especially last year with Baco doing the work. But some places, if you get a heavy enough rain, it is simply gonna leave the road at the first spot it gets. So that's all the updates I've got. We'll just keep updating this and letting you know where they're at as we proceed through 2017.
Dave?
Randy, did you want to add something?
Yeah, that will be your next crisis point, because it's not just water and sand, it'll also be snow this winter, because it's the same issue. We have a significant number of the residences are significantly below the road grade, and and that's a factor that we really can't do anything about. The water is going to exit the road at its first available point, and so is the snow on the end of the plow. So this is going to be something you're going to hear about every spring, every winter, around the township. It was a problem before, but without the curb, it was spread a little bit more before it got to the driveways. So, this is danged if you do, danged if you don't. We fixed the roads because people wanted the roads fixed. Well, that creates other issues. You can't control the flow of the water unless you totally control it, and we do not have a sewer system.
Yes, Dan.
How many wheelbarrow loads are you talking in the driveway?
Maybe 2 or 3.
It's not a huge amount, but it's not just in one location. I mean, and that's the issue.
I get the same situation at my place with right at the creek where it's designed to go. All the sand, which I like, comes down to one spot. I used to have to go and sweep it all off the street and pick it up with a shovel and a wheelbarrow. Now it's all in one spot, so all I gotta do is go right there and clean it up. It only takes a half an hour, just to clean that
The Road
sand.
Commission did acquire a new sweeper, and I think they had in their budget for this year 2 of them, but they still have not modified their schedule. They're still doing the same schedule. They have 2 or maybe 3 sweepers for the entire county.
When was the last time a sweeper was in the township?
Yeah.
Last year.
Not my way.
Well, the problem is that it came, and then the rain came and washed all the sand right back again out of the intersections. So it's going to be a very difficult situation. And the sand, once it exits the road, is plugging up the catch basins.
But it still falls back to the road commission, because we know they've got reduced funding for sand and plowing and maintenance, but we have taken a huge burden off of them by having this road project. And they need to step up to the plate and take care of some of these issues. They have budgets for them. We just saved them a bunch of money by doing this. So who else is getting the money they would have spent in the township?
I think you have to assume they were gonna spend some money in the township on the roads, and
Right.
I think that's a leap.
So we at least get that. So I might have to give Jim another call. Get him mad at me again.
When is that next meeting for township and county?
I can tell you, I don't have it off the top of my head. It's in my book. You want to go? I'll let you know. Okay. Yes, Randy?
Well, one comment, it's a good comment on the road at Erickson Street. It has not heaved. So the drainage there must have did some good when they undermined the road. However, a big vehicle got stuck on the road and dug a hole into the pavement.
On Erickson?
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys have seen that, but
That one spot?
holes about that big and about that deep.
Yeah, we've made a contact.
And I'm not going to name names, but I suspect I know who did
We've
it.
made a contact about repairing it.
So if the residents see those holes on Erickson Hill there, hopefully we can get those repaired, so.
Okay, thanks for that information. Yes, Ernie?
Just to follow up on our millage that saved the county a few dollars in that. All you do is look down the road when Nagani Township, when they have their vote to repair all the roads, the savings that there's gonna be for the county road commission again. I've always asked the question, where's this extra money going that would normally have gone to the township? Where is it going? I have never really got an answer from them at all on anything in that too, so.
Well, I think there was a veiled answer that was offered once or twice, that it was to pay down their debt.
No, we're paying for those
I'm
services.
just saying, that's the information that I heard secondhand. Obviously, it was secondhand, it wasn't firsthand, but it was that the comment was made that those savings were going to reduce their debt.
Okay. That's going on my list.
I don't know that that's true or not, but that was, like I say, a secondhand comment. Which would make sense. I mean, you would, if you have extra money, you pay your debt down.
It's not extra.
It depends on who has it.
I suppose.
Lynn?
Yes, Pete?
I think we have to take a look over the last 2 years. I mean, when we fixed up these roads, what's not working is a culvert system. And the drainage is not working out. The design of the culvert might have to change. Or what's our chance of getting the county to clear it up? It's not only the roads here. It's the one here on Woods over there in the bottom. Last year, we hollered and hollered at them, you know.
A couple years, 2, 3
I know,
years.
every year it's the same thing. On the end of Montgomery, there's about that much of the pipe showing, not covered with leaves and sand. It's just a poor fit. I don't know what the answer is. I haven't had time to ask Mark about it, but either we have to have a culvert with like a flare on it or something to keep some of the rocks and this stuff out of there, because it's just filling up. I checked today over there, and then you go down to check out the rest of the culverts, and they're all the same size. You know, they're just terrible. And the road commission's got to get out there and clean them up, or we're going to have the same problem. And then I don't know what the schedule is. Did we receive a schedule for roads yet?
Oh, it's the same, it's just a rotating schedule.
Yeah, where do we land?
I think we're not quite in the upper half of the schedule.
Oh, we should make it by October then.
Oh, no, year by year.
Yeah. But it just, I think that's one of the things that we're going to take a look at and learn about it, is the culverts. If we can't depend on them to do it, how can we design them any differently? I don't know. I'm not an engineer.
I would guess.
But I know they're
it'd be
not working
September.
the way they are now. Yeah.
September, October this year before we get fully swept.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna make a call.
We really don't want to think about getting a sweeper, send somebody out there, because that would be a benefit to their
Yeah, we
residents.
can't do all of this. This is crazy.
Well, it's not only that, they are tremendously bad maintenance hogs. You know, you're basically, it's a rolling sandblaster inside, and, you know, and they require a horrendous amount of maintenance and repair, and that's why the road commission only has 2, and they try to run them as long as they can. But I did see a new one going down Moran here a week or so ago. It looked like a brand new one. I don't know if it was a contractor or if it was the road commission, but it was, I mean, it could have belonged to Overstar or Associated or somebody.
I know a couple of years back, we paid to have it done.
Well, we hired it out.
But, you know, under circumstances right now, you know, just, we have nothing going on right now.
I'll visit with him. I'll give him a call tomorrow. So 12A, consider Superior Watershed request for KBIC 2% funds pass-through.
And that's what this is. It is simply a request by the Superior Watershed Partnership to have us be the recipient agency for 2% funds to be passed through to them for their youth program, youth conservation program. I think it's $24,000 if I have it right. It's, it is a request to the KBIC for, I'm sorry, $27,500. This is the same thing we've done in the past from North Star Academy and the City of Marquette and several others acted. The 2% funds have to go through a government agency to be distributed.
Randy?
What is the preferred motion on this?
We'll just move to allow the 2% monies to pass through Marquette Township for the designated agency.
And
I think
authorize
that's-
me to sign. And we do a letter, we do a letter to KBIC saying we support it.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
Motion and support. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Looks like we kind of jumped
you're
our
here.
numbers here. anyway.
I'm sorry, she is here. I was looking for Carl, and looking around for Carl because he said he was gonna be here. Sorry?
Oh, did you want to
Do you
speak?
wanted
I'm
to-
sorry. I didn't. Oh, okay. Okay. Looks like you're good. Yes, John?
Are you ready for the next item?
Yeah, second it.
Kind of, even though it's, says C and it should be B. We
Approve
didn't,
the
I guess we
second
didn't catch
reading.
that. Sure, go ahead.
Approve the second reading.
Second.
Motion and support. Do we have any questions or issues, or, I mean, we've already looked at this actually twice before.
I think we discussed it enough.
All changes are highlighted, so we know what they are, so it's no difference in what we
Yep.
talked about, so.
There is one, though, the ordinance in the packet is actually the old ordinance, and we will put the new updated ordinance in the packet. I'll take care
Correct
of
one.
that tomorrow, because when the,
It contains all of Roger's amendments
yes.
that we all welcome.
Roger, you had?
Yeah, on that note, as I was going through the board packet, I had a minor panic attack at first, because what is in the board packet originally has one minor incorrect provision in section 6. So I wanted to make certain that what you had at the first reading was the correct one, and it was. And I'm not even sure what the source of the revision in section 6 in your board packet was, where that came from. It did not come from my office. But the correct version is what I circulated late this afternoon, and is also the same version that you had in the board packet for the May 16 meeting, so all is good.
And that was at your place, I gave you hard copies.
And that's the one that we approved for second reading.
And will be published also.
Okay, so all in favor?
Well, it's
Aye.
it's a roll call for an
Oh,
ordinance.
it's an ordinance, of course.
Trustee Marks,
Yes.
trustee LaRue,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Everson,
Yes?
treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
clerk Rattari is yes, and supervisor Duran.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0. So we will now, from this point, we will publish, and I think, Randy, when we publish, it becomes in effect, 30 days after, something of that nature?
30 days.
30 days.
I think it's 30 days after we publish, it will become into effect.
Let's see here. Unless we specified a date, an effective date in it.
I don't think we
Yeah,
did.
actually, we specified that this ordinance shall become effective the day following publication of a notice of its adoption in a newspaper of general circulation, so we don't have to wait the whole 30
Okay,
days.
so when we publish it, it'll become effective the day after.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a one-time publication, I
Yes.
believe. Okay.
And the ordinance name will be the date that it's effective, correct? The ordinance date, or name of the ordinance?
Well, generally, what you've done is 17 dash, the 17 signifies the year of the ordinance, and usually, the date.
Yeah,
The
the
date.
date.
In some instances, in years and years ago, you used to, I believe, have like 1701 or 1702 if it was a new ordinance, but I believe that in all recent memory, it's been by date.
Okay, that's just for my office when we put it into the book, so.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Yes, John?
Are you ready for the next one?
Not yet.
Well, yeah, we
Budget
voted, so
amendment.
we're good.
Approve budget
Okay.
amendment number
Yep,
2017.
and it should be, I got it, John. 12C is what it should be also.
Yes.
Second. I second that.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, all in favor?
It's a
Aye.
roll call, but,
Budget.
okay, trustee Marks,
Yes.
trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Everson,
Yes?
treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
clerk Rattari is yes, and supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0.
Okay, the manager's report is 12E. You have it in your
Well,
packet?
12D is our, the.
Oh, the employment, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
discuss that.
I got too many cross-offs and letters here. I crossed off E to make a D, okay. All right. The reason this is on the agenda it kind of got confusing, but Randy came into the office the other day and said he just thought it might behoove us to think about if we decided to not renew his contract, looking at this before September or October comes up, in case we have the event of 6 or 7 or 8 months of having to look for somebody. So the evaluation comes first, the contract is second chronologically. So we put them on together just so we can have discussion, which is what we're supposed to do here, on how we perceive this. Now, I asked Randy, what do you want to do? Are you ready to retire? Do you want to keep working? That's the first thing I asked. Second thing was, what does your wife think? What does she want you to do? So he's willing to do whatever we want him to do. And he hasn't said, I would like a 1-year contract or 5 years or 10 or whatever. This is just the initial conversation to find out where this board feels like we want to go, just to give us time, because we've got roughly 6 months before the end of the year, before his contract is up. Anything you want to add, Randy?
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression that I'm looking to pack up and get out the door at all. Over the last several years, you've had a fair amount of conflict. You've had a fair amount of finger pointing from several members of the public who you saw tonight, and a variety of things, and allegations, accusations of improprieties and things along those lines. This is the end of a contract term. This is my second year of a 2-year contract term. So I wanted to give the board the opportunity to not be hamstrung to have to wait until September to do a performance evaluation, that if you wanted to have a change in leadership or a change in direction, that you'd only have 60 days to try and find a replacement. So this, that kind of recruitment is going to take at least 6 months, to go forward. So I wanted to give the board, we've got a good working relationship. I certainly am not looking to be out of this position. I enjoy the work. I like it. I think we're making a lot of good progress. There's a lot yet to be done. I still have one child in college for 2 more years at least, possibly more. Lynn's question about my wife, I think she'd like me to be in Alaska, but that's between whatever. So she's very supportive as well. My wife's been retired for 7 years now, so she's well into the grandmother mode. I'm not looking to go out. In fact, I told Lynn I do intend, if you don't choose to take this option and want to wait till September, I will be asking for an extension of my contract going forward. So I'm not looking to get out, but I wanted to not put the board under pressure should you want to go in a different direction. I wanted to give you the opportunity to have at least 6 months of somebody still in place to be able to look elsewhere if you wish to do that. So that was the whole reason for bringing this up at the end of a contract term. So.
Anybody have any questions or issues or comments? Randy?
Yes, I did look at Randy's employment contract. It only says that we have to do it by September 30th. No.
By
September 30th of the year, but it does state that before any continuation of an employment agreement, that has to be done first.
Correct.
So with that in mind, I would make a motion that we amend our evaluation of this year to do it in July with an August
Support.
with an August 1st. Well, it would be sometime early in August where we would have the results and discuss that with the manager. Is that acceptable? That's my motion.
Okay, and you have support.
What is this going to do now?
It basically moves our evaluation process up from September to July. And we do the same thing. I'll give you the evaluations probably after the next meeting. You'll have the whole month of July to evaluate from the previous year. And I will compile those August 1st, and we will, myself and Lynn will meet with the manager, discuss those, and we'll bring the results to the board. And Randy has the option to have that in closed session if he likes.
And the board also has the option that if you feel that you wish to go forward with the relationship, continue a relationship, you can leave it as is and do it in September. I just offer you that option at this point so you have some flexibility. And it didn't come from you, it came from me. That's the whole point of this, is to give you that option. So it's up to you.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Question.
Go ahead. Oh, you're calling a question. Well, usually you have a question. I wasn't sure. Okay.
I just think we can get off the dime.
Yeah.
Question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Thank you. So, yes, Dave?
I would make a comment about that now, is that I voted in favor of that, not because I want to start the process of looking for another manager, but because I would like to see us get this resolved sooner rather than later.
That was his intent, yep.
And I would have every intention of supporting extending his contract.
Okay,
Unless you just want to get ready to go home.
now I can cross this off.
Be honest.
Now we're on the manager's report, 12E.
You do have my written report. As Mark has already addressed, I did put in a tentative schedule, and this is a tentative schedule that was talked about for the road construction this year. That will be finalized later, just say that this week, Mark? Yeah, later this week. And then you'll be able to get back to your constituents when you get the question, when is my road going to be done? You'll be able to tell them. On the 17th, which is Father's Day weekend, it's not, Father's Day is Sunday, but on the Saturday, we're having our 8th annual car show and cruise. Again, at the, it's hard to believe it's eight years already. In fact, some of the cars that were at the first one could now be antiques. But at any event, that is on Saturday, the 17th, and I do have the schedule in here. Starts at 10 o'clock, and it will run until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon with a variety of events going on. A couple of new things this year that we're going to be doing. Doing a burnout and doing a rev-up type thing for the folks who want to participate in that and kind of show off their cars. And ultimately will culminate again in a parade as it does. However, the routing for this year is going to be somewhat different because of all of the roundabout construction and road construction going on in the city. We're going to keep it in the township this year. So there is posted on our website. There's a poster that shows the festivities and the routing of the parade as it anticipates. And essentially, it's going to be Wright Street to Ontario, Ontario to Werner, Werner back to the mall area to basically get through as many areas of people being able to view as possible. And if you'd like to volunteer, we certainly, the Community Events Committee would certainly be happy to have additional volunteers working as well for any part of that time, not for the whole thing, but for any part of it. Summer hours, we are now on our summer hours. I just want to remind residents that the office officially closes at 4:30. I'm still usually here till 5 o'clock, so if you rap on the door, I'll still be here. But officially, it closes at 4:30, so some of the staff you may want to see likely will not be here after 4:30. So just bear that in mind. We are open at 8, same as always. Corridor Committee, we have a meeting coming up on the 20th of this month, and that will be at the Ishpeming TSC, the Transportation Service Committee. Service Center. And I guess unfortunately they left, but I do want to make some comments in response to some of the comments made at public hearing. Mr. Sims, I'll use his name, stated at the podium that he has asked me for information, and I'm challenging him right now to give me the date that he asked me. Whether it was in an email, verbal, or a letter, I want a date. If he's going to make that assertion, I want the fact. He has not spoken with me for 2 years, at least, possibly 3 years. So that did not happen. Every item that he stood up there and listed as a violation of the purchasing policy was an action of this board. So it's absolutely not factual. Additional comments were made about the water issue. If the board will remember, while the individual who brought it up was on the board, I cautioned the board when you were first talking about utilizing the water and sewer along with the road that you would not have the funds to do that unless and until DWRF or USDA funded the project. So that was with full knowledge, and he was part of that vote. And I resent the fact that they stand up here and make these accusations and allegations with not one shred of fact. And I challenge them to back up these statements with facts. So I'm sorry, I'm not an elected official, and they don't have the opportunity to stand up there and malign my credibility. That's all I had.
Anything for the manager? Questions?
Feel better now?
Yes,
Just
Ernie.
following up on the manager's comment on the, warning us about the costs and that. I think if you go back in time, I brought up about the dollar amounts going down in each one of the funds in that, continually in that, to be careful of that. So it's not only him, but being the treasurer, I always kind of looked at that and brought that up, that we were going down in this. We have to watch how we're spending our money all the time in that too, so.
12, it should be actually F then, the water production report that was added. And Mr. Sims did ask to speak on that. I have his name on here, but he's not in the hall right now. So I'm passing him over.
Can I comment quickly on it?
Sure.
Once I got it and looked at it and really looked at it, this is what I had been asking about for a long time and that. And more I looked at it, I started generating more questions as to looking at this. How can we kind of analyze why these big shifts from month to month to month? Is there any way we can go through and do an analysis of that? Try to determine what's causing some of this and that too, so. Well, all the hands will go up
Whoa.
now.
That'll teach me to turn my head.
I can tell you,
Rotator cuff injuries.
I can tell you, Treasurer Johnson, water use is directly related to weather. If it's a wet, cool summer, you don't have much water use. If it's a hot, dry summer, you have record water use. It's very related to the weather. And what have we had so far this year? Cool,
Rain.
wet spring. So that's why it's such a down.
But not only that.
Dave?
The reason I requested that this be pulled out of the consent agenda is on several occasions, both I and the supervisor have asked for additional information on this report, and we have yet to get it, although every time we've asked for it, we've been told that that could happen if you ask for it. And the information that I believe we were both asking for is to better quantify the lost water. We've got water pumped, water purchased from the city, and then we just have a total. We don't have any idea how much water was billed through the meters. So we don't have any idea of what the unmetered water that sits out there, what the unaccounted water is. We don't have any idea how much of that unaccounted for water was used for things like the fire department, or for draining the Cox storage tank so that we could redo the inside. That water was just pumped out on the ground, but we have no idea of what that was, and that has been asked for 2 months that I know of, and we still don't have it. And I guess that annoys me. And it was for that reason that I would like to reject this water production report and send it back to the Public Works Department to provide the information that's been requested.
We can do that through the manager.
Just so the board is aware, when I saw this report, I did have a conversation with the superintendent, advising that it's been requested several times by different board members, and it's still not on the form. So I suspect you will see it on the next report.
Well, and he'll be coming to the next meeting to give a report, so
Yes.
that we should have that in 2 weeks at least, if not beforehand, so that we can look at it before he gives his report.
You know,
And I know the graphs that are attached was an effort to try and provide that information, but that's not in the format that you need to see it. You need to see it in columnar format, like Trustee Wiegand and Treasurer Johnson are talking about. It needs to be in columnar format. It can be charted, but you need it in column format so you can look at it on here and determine where the losses are happening. Is it from the pump or is it from the purchased? And what the reasoning is, and much of it is, as Trustee Wiegand mentioned, when we have maintenance to do on a tank, we try to draw it down through use as much as possible, but there's invariably a fairly large number of gallons that get pumped out onto the ground, to empty the tank, or get moved somewhere else. Fire department use is generally pretty well pretty well metered. If it's in the hall, it is. If it's on scene someplace, they do an estimate basically from their meter on the truck, and in different places. So I think we have a pretty good close handle on that. I think what the bigger indication is that if we can isolate those items, now we're talking about something's happening within the system underground, and how do you then determine that, and find it before it bubbles up out of the ground, which is typically the way you see it. You found it by somebody says there's water coming up next to my driveway. Why is that? Then again, look at the example at Lost Creek. How many years did that go on where their water use was significantly large, and then it was discovered that the main valve had a significant leak. That's not on our water system; it was on their side. But still, I mean that should have been, that kind of charting would have caught that there was obviously a problem.
Dave, go ahead.
And I guess that's exactly what I'm referring to, is I know that the fire department keeps very good records on how much water they use, but a lot of that water ends up being unmetered water.
Correct.
There's no accounting for that. And so what we end up with when UPEA did their analysis, when we were talking about putting the water main in, this is why we spent $153,000, because we couldn't get the information that's already in our system. Public Works knows where all that water is going. They're just not sharing the information.
Yeah.
And I know it's readily available. It's not a matter of them developing a new spreadsheet to get it. It's just a matter of asking the database to put it on the spreadsheet. And that's all you really want, because you want to have a real actual number of what the water loss is, so that you can trend it, so when the actual water loss that is not accounted for by anybody continues to rise, you can put a value on it, and you can decide it's reaching a point where the cost is exceeding the value received, and it's time to start replacing something.
Right.
And that's, I'm sure that's what the supervisor was asking for. I know that's what I was asking for, and I would just like to, I feel like I'm being stalled. I'd like to get the information.
Yes, Randy.
The one area where we, and Dan, you might be able to help with this if I'm wrong. The one area that we really don't have a handle on and don't really have a way of doing that is on the fire suppression systems and the larger structures that we have. They are unmetered. They're an open line. So if that system is triggered by heat or somebody foolishly moving a box and knocking a head off or whatever, that water will flow until it's turned off. And I don't think there's any way to monitor that, is there?
Volume going through a pipe at a certain time.
But
Well,
if we
for a time frame, yeah, I mean, volume and time and that kind of thing. So, but that's one of those anomalies that's in there because of the fire flow structure.
But if we have the report honed down to be able to identify where the problems are,
Yeah.
we would be able to identify that too.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen often
Yeah.
at all.
No, it doesn't.
Basically what does happen is there's periodic testing, but I think we have a pretty good estimate of how much water is used on those periodic testings. But if one of those systems does in fact fire when the building's unoccupied, it's going to pour a lot of water into that building.
Dave?
That water use, we can track that.
Mhm.
There is a gauge sets on the Superintendent of Public Works' computer
Yes.
that he spent a lot of time bragging to me about, that actually shows spikes so that he can detect that there is a leak someplace, but we don't get that information.
Yeah.
And that's the information that, when you see a spike in that spike should be justified by something. And the spike is definitive enough on his gauge that he can tell how many gallons was involved in the spike. And those are the kind of things that you need to put in the unmetered water loss.
And those are the kinds of things that go into your calculation of what would be a reasonable rate for the residents, because you shouldn't necessarily penalize a resident for that kind of a use.
Anything else?
Have it.
Moving right along.
Do it to him.
Sorry.
All right. We're changing 12H, Road Hab bid award from H to G, because these kind of got
could have been.
Kind of renumbered wrong. Okay, I think that falls to you now, Mark,
Mark.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah, rehab now.
And I do want to make one comment before we go into these two items is we've kind of set a policy that we don't add things last minute, but these are emergency items that have to be acted on this evening for the road project to go forward. So this isn't, because we were having problems in the past with getting agenda items after the Thursday deadline.
Right.
All the time, even contractors' pay request, so bring that back to your company.
Okay.
After the deadline, so if it's after Thursday, you're not getting paid for another 2 weeks, so.
Yeah.
So just so the residents know, this is an unusual thing, and I think we were justified by adding it this evening, and we'll try not to do this so everyone can, have the proper information before the board meeting.
All right, with that said, I'll send those to you, Randy, or Andrew?
Yes. Well, both, Randy's.
Okay. As I said before, yeah, we got bids last Wednesday. We received 2 bids, one from Baco, one from Payne and Dolan. Baco did the 2016 project, Payne and Dolan did the 2015 project. Baco was the low bidder, $1,198,000, $198,361. Payne and Dolan was at $1,367,563.95, and our estimate was about 1.48 million. So Payne and Dolan was about 100,000 below our estimate. Baco was about 300,000. So they did the work last year. I thought they did a good job in 2016. I know you had mentioned the culvert. Pete mentioned the culvert. On every end section with this project, we actually added on the little flared end sections to try to help with some of those issues.
Good.
Although I think the leaves and the sand is constantly going to be an issue on any culvert or storm sewer.
That's where the county comes in. Should come in.
So at this time, we had recommended that the board consider moving forward with Baco in their amount of $1,198,361. Also to add contingency of $100,000 for unforeseen conditions. Like we did that in 2015 and 2016. I don't think we tapped into the one in 2015. And we didn't use up all of 2016. But it's for the
Yes,
board to
Dave.
consider.
Oops, sorry.
The bid earlier, in the earlier meeting tonight, and they came in with a recommendation to award it to Baco for $1,198,361 plus contingency. And with
that
the
a
board's
motion?
approval, I would make a motion to.
I'll second it.
Motion, yes, Ernie.
Question, where do we stand on our finances, available dollars for this?
Actually,
We have 1.3 in the 2017 budget, 1.3 million under township improvements.
Did we do, I know we tapped into, like, I was thinking it was 15, and Mark's saying 16, so, but does that come forward to our 1.3 now?
Oh, it's still
It's
in the
not
fund.
s-
Yeah, it's still in,
part
it's
of
still
that.
in the pool. We estimated 1.3 million for this year's project, and that's what we have in the township improvements fund. So
Nice.
this bid is certainly, even with contingency, is within that.
But then the contingency from 15 hasn't been used.
That's
No.
all. That's all wiped out. We just pretty much look
What
at
moved it in?
2017 as
Roll it.
just a clean slate.
Okay.
You have 1.3 available, 1.3 roughly, with the award and contingency amount.
At the end of the project, what's left over goes towards maintenance. future maintenance. And, you know, and there will be money for future maintenance. That's why we have it for a 15-year levy.
So what you're talking about, we're actually, with the 100,000 contingency, we're at 1.13.
Just under, yeah, just
Right
under
At
it.
that point in time, right now,
Mhm.
so we really don't have much fudging to do at this point.
Well, and we're down to the last 4.2 miles?
Yeah, somewhere around.
4.2, 4.6 miles, and this is all crushing shape, so, so we, you know, we should be pretty much right on. It's all crushing shape, it's not, you know, we're not getting into any strange stuff.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet, but we're not anticipating any, let's put it that way.
Buffer that.
I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
right at that level. And
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Who will notify him as we move forward then, from the township?
Who do we have
We
to
already
notify? Mark knows.
I mean, who notifies?
Well, there'd be a,
Baco that we're-
there'll be a formal notice to Mark that we've accepted the recommendation. The board's acted to approve it, to approve the award to Baco.
Yeah, this Thursday, we have a pre-construction with Baco, and at that point, we could sign all the, now I guess Randy, in a sense, has authorization to
Yes,
sign.
to sign the documents.
Sign all the documents.
The authorization is carried over from prior.
Yeah, it's the same project.
It is, it's just the third phase of a three-phase project.
They did a great job last year, too.
Mm-hmm. We got lots of good compliments.
All right,
Okay,
anything else?
I think that's it, unless you're part of H.
Nope.
All in favor?
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for sticking around, too. That was a long night for you. Government at work, hey? 12H,
Call the question.
consider Marquette County Road Commission estimate. Who wants to take that? One of the Randys?
Well, this was, you know, Trustee Wiegand and I have talked about this. Basically, every year, the road commission goes out and asks what roads you would like to have worked on, whether it's a chip seal, a crack seal, or whatever, a tar seal. We gave them a list of roads, and they came back with really no corrective repair other than crack filling, you know, the tar filling. And we don't think that's appropriate. And I think Trustee Wiegand, on behalf of the road committee, has some comments that he wants to make with regard to that.
I am too.
Go for it, Dave.
The way that when this was originally submitted to the county, it was a combination of crack filling, which is good for quarter-inch cracks and smaller, overband crack filling, which is for cracks larger than a quarter-inch, and I believe it's up to like an inch. And then there's a hot mix that has to go into holes that are bigger than that, which anybody that drives down Fair has seen it at the end of Fair in Woodridge, where you have the road is separating in the center with 2.5 to 3 inch spread between it. And so my question to Manager Gerard was, it appears from this bid that the only thing they're doing is crack filling, which suggests that everything they're going to do is for something quarter inches or smaller. With his permission, we called the county, because they're the contractor in this deal, and asked them to define what exactly they're doing for their $11,785. And we talked specifically about overband and hot mix going in some of the larger holes. His comment is that the only thing that Farner bid was the crack filling, so they would dump some crack fill in the larger holes, but that it wouldn't really resolve the issue. The whole thing just seems ridiculous that we would even entertain spending $11,000 to do something that we don't need done. What we need done is we need to have the larger fissures filled, and we need to have the overband done, because the whole objective of this maintenance program is to keep water out from under the road. And to just go along and fill the cracks that are a quarter inch or smaller is not going to keep the water out from underneath the road. We discussed it at the road committee tonight. It was a road committee's recommendation that we do not award this to the county. and that we actually seek an RFP for the proper scope of work so that we can get it done the way it's supposed to be done.
Sounds like a good idea.
And we also had, when we met with, at the bid opening, oh, Mark left. Wow, that was quick. At the,
He sat here for a long time, the poor
I
guy.
just looked up and he was there. But at the bid opening, when we had the representatives there, we did initiate some discussion with regard to incorporating this kind of repair into what they're doing on the crushing shapes. So we haven't had that full discussion as yet, but did broach the subject.
The consensus from Baco on that is that they really don't have the expertise to do that. That they were suggesting that some of those areas that have significant problems, like the end of Woodridge on Fair, is that we might want to just do an overlay there because they really don't have the personnel and equipment and the expertise to go around and do crack filling and overband. We don't have the budget to do an overlay just because
No.
they don't want to do an overband.
So we'll do an RFP.
So that issue is pretty well been addressed with Baco, and they really don't have the means to do that.
So where does that leave the road commission then? We don't have any obligation to them
No.
as part of this
Not for this.
Well, the interesting thing about the road commission is in spite of all the work we've done on the road, they, in their wisdom, they feel appropriate that of that $11,785, 17% of that goes to the county for oversight of this project.
Yep.
And they can't even throw in the 17% for the fact that we've done all their roads for them in the township, which just, I find annoying.
So we can put together an RFP, working with Mark to get an estimate, an engineer's estimate of the cost and go from there.
Do you want a motion on that, or is it just
I
direction?
don't think you need it. I think it falls under the road maintenance portion of this project.
Yes, sir.
We'll pay for that then.
It'll probably come out of the millage, as maintenance, as part of the maintenance portion of the millage.
I mean,
Yeah, Pete?
all the work that we've done over the last several years, if the county don't step up, it's gonna be a waste. They should be out there fixing up Commerce Drive right now. Brookton Road needs work on. And they're not gonna do anything, so we're gonna wait for another 10 years, so you have to dig them out yourself?
And that's our whole agreement with the public, is that we part of this money is for
Right.
maintenance.
So if they don't feel that they could do something like that and charge us for everything that we do for their roads, I think we should just write them off.
And if you look at the part for Marquette Township, you can see the roads that were included in that. And that was based on an asset management evaluation of what kind of repairs would restore those roads and bring them back up from a Pazer 5 or 6 and put them back into a Pazer 8 or 9.
Whose estimate, yours, or?
Yeah.
Using Pazer.
Based on
Using Pazer.
Based on the Pazer and the Road Soft program.
They had the road soft program, they just don't do it.
They don't use it.
They don't use it one bit. And I told people downstate about that, they said, oh, no, I said, no, they don't. So,
Along with that is that I think this is the first year they're gonna get that extra money too from.
It is, yeah.
So where is all that money going at the
I
same
know
time?
exactly
Pay
where
off
that's
the debt.
going. Yep, no, it's buying equipment. Buying equipment, and that's why he got so mad at me at the last meeting, because I called him on it. And I said, I don't think that's good fiscal management to take all of that money that's a windfall, and you should be putting into projects that you haven't done anything with.
with the
and-
equipment you have.
And now you're buying equipment. And boy, his face got pretty red. He was not happy with me, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't think it is.
But if you buy the equipment and you don't have any money to run the
Right.
equipment, what are you gonna do?
And I said, oh, what were you gonna do? Just wait for another windfall to take care of the rest of the roads now that you have all this equipment sitting there? And they figure $1 million when they hire a new person, they figure $1 million, or I'm sorry, $100,000 to hire a new person. Where in the heck would they get that kind of money or that number to hire another body?
That's at their,
Job for you, Dave.
Gee.
their rate and benefit package, that's
So,
probably pretty close.
I'm just gonna call him again.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I don't think we need a motion on this, do we?
No, we'll just
we
do
just
an,
don't
just
accept
do an
it.
RFP.
Just don't do it.
We're just not
Well,
accepting.
we'll do an RFP.
We're
We'll
not
not-
accepting it.
We'll notice them that we're not
No action
accepting
on
the
it.
proposal, and we'll do our own RFP.
There's no action on the item. So it didn't happen.
Okay. We're good? Okay. Public comment. Dun, da, da, da.
Hello?
You're it.
board, 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Oh, you want to show your little video?
got it?
1 minute.
All right. Time 'em, Randy.
I was gonna say,
70 seconds.
we could probably put it on our website, it would be better, but.
Sure, you can do that too, just plug
You waited this long, Mike. We'll give you that minute and 10 seconds.
So
Yes,
basically,
we
what
will.
you're gonna see is you've got 147 bikers here, and you're gonna see it's not just a race. It's meant, it's for families, and it's meant, and there, doesn't work again. All right,
It's
honest,
going.
I took it back there and it worked.
It's going.
Oh, wait, here it goes.
Yeah.
Here it goes.
There's no volume.
Oh, little guy.
You know it like that.
We got music to bike by, too.
Nice thing about this race, it's down all the way.
So that's it.
That was good. That's a good way to end a meeting.
It's a fun event.
Well, it's a great course too. If you haven't run the Iron Ore Heritage Trail coming down from Nagani or Erskine coming down this way, it's spectacular. I mean, it really is, especially in the fall. Yeah, especially in the fall. It's gorgeous in the fall.
If that's it for the public, how about the board? Anything else from the board? Yes, Randy?
One quick item, I did not have the correct date. The last day to register for the August election is Monday, July 10th at 4 o'clock. So you have that extra weekend to get in here by 4 o'clock. And also, this is going to be kind of a slow election year. We weren't planning to have any, but we have 2 now. Next year, we'll have 2 with the midterms. Anyone wishing to be an election inspector, either talk to myself or Lois Stonehouse in the office, and we'll get you oriented to get the proper class and hopefully work in the future. Because some of my election inspectors are getting rather elderly and can't work 16 to 20 hours anymore. So we're trying to split shifts now and make it easier on some folks. So anyone wishing to do that, we'd be more than welcome to bring you in and try to train you and bring you on board. So
And they do get a stipend for that and lunch and
yes, if you're a worker, you get a $10 an hour, and we do provide meals because you can't leave the building. We do provide meals, and that is actually Pete did ask me once about that, but we're allowed to do that because they're not leaving the premises. It's a lot easier if your inspectors don't leave, I can tell you that.
Just on the day of the election.
Correct.
but they are required that day to spend the whole day from 7 to 8.
Sometimes the precinct chairs have to stay the whole day from open to close, but the other workers, we've usually split shifts, so they work like 6:30 to 2:30, and then 2:30 to close, which is like 9 to 10.
Okay.
And so we try to give 7-8 hours for the folks that are working the split shifts.
That's the minimum though, right? So if somebody had a full-time job, they'd be hard pressed. They couldn't do.
No, yeah, if you're working an election that day, I would, you probably need to take the day off for that.
Yes, Dan, Dave, whoever you are.
Just in light of the board action tonight, just a couple comments for the residents. First, things are going to move fairly quickly. We've got the pre-construction meeting on Thursday, and Baco may very well start at next Monday. If not, then by the end of the week. And things are going to move pretty fast, and we've got 3.8 miles of roads out there that are going to be all ground at the same time, and all shaped at the same time, and then all overlaid. And some things that keep coming up every year that we do this, and one thing the residents need to keep in mind, at the road right-of-way is 60 feet in this area that we're being considered, and that's approximately 30 feet from the center line is the road right-of-way, which extends considerably into the residents' property. And while they all think that that's their property, and they all are up in arms when they come in and start digging in there, that's actually road right-of-way property. And if you want to see pretty much where it is if you measure 30 feet from the painted center line or from the center line of the asphalt, that's within a couple feet of where the road right-of-way is. And we had a lady call today that was concerned about the sod that she just put in the edge of her lawn, and if they would pull it up and then relay it, and the answer to that question is no. If she wants to pull it up, she's going to have to pull it up and relay it when they're gone. Another comment I'd like to make is the residents are being affected by this construction. If they've got any questions or concerns, they should be brought to the attention of the township sooner rather than later. A lot of these are addressed at no cost if it's done before the fact. After the fact, if it can be done at all, based on the budget constraints, there's a cost involved to the township, which is a cost involved to the taxpayers. Another reminder is that the residents that the road rehab project is not going to resolve all your drainage issues. Its attempt is, at best, not to make them worse, but it is not going to resolve them all. The last one is that the county specs, there's been a lot of complaints about the type of slope restoration they do adjacent to the road, and it's been called garbage topsoil. The county specs require that the 2 feet from the end of the bit curb, 2 feet away, that shoulder be of gravel, road gravel. The township and UPEA has gotten the county to go along with mixing some topsoil in that, but it still has to be predominantly gravel. And that's not by township design or UPEA thought they'd throw that in there. That is county specs, and that's the way it has to be done. So it's not going to be the same lawn that you had when we tore it up, because you have to match those county specs.
And part of the reason for that is drainage.
Well, one reason is draining. The other reason is as soon as somebody leaves the edge of that bit curb, like a male person, or anybody pulls up on the shoulder a little bit, if that's just topsoil, they'll sink in there 6 or 8 inches every time. If it's gravel like it's supposed to be, and predominantly gravel, it's not an issue. And that's why that's in the county specs, and there's nothing we can do about that. But if there's anybody out there that worries about what we're going to do when we get to their place, they're better off to have that discussion with UPEA or somebody else in the township before they start, rather than after they've already gone down and laid the asphalt down, because then it gets to be expensive, and if it can be repaired at all, it's going to be expensive. And that would be it.
That's it?
Yep.
Pete?
Going along with that, with the roads being done, like Dave said, they're gonna be done all pretty much at the same time, so when you're out there, use caution. Take your time, slow down a little bit so that we don't have no accidents. I don't think we had any accidents yet because of this, so just use good judgment. Again, the car show, June 17th at Westwood Mall. And another thing is August 5th, on Saturday, August 5th, we're gonna have community days over at the Lions Recreation area over there. And we're looking for ball players. So if you can put up a team, call a township and they'll get you in charge of Dennis. Co-ed team, yes, co-ed team. Because we like to get some more ball teams in it. So it's gonna be a great time. So you got a little time, just call, if you're interested, call up the township and they'll put you in touch with Dennis and we can do it that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. About this side.
I just got one question on, is that okay? On people that, you know, in the audience taking cheap shots, and what can be done about it? I don't appreciate it.
We're public officials.
I know, but our manager, they're
Manager,
taking
yes.
cheap shots at him, and it's uncalled for. They don't have the proper information. They think they do. Just because they don't like him, they shouldn't be here taking cheap shots.
I have talked to legal about that a few times, whether we're on the edge of, having an issue with calling out other employees too. They're not under public scrutiny like we are. We have to kind of sit here and take it to a point. But, yeah, I don't appreciate the employees being picked on at all. And Roger, you've got my blessing to just stop anybody from, if you have that authority or knowledge to, if somebody's getting across the line with picking on our employees, do it.
We cut him off.
Well, the supervisor has the authority to moderate the meeting. So it would not be appropriate for the township attorney.
Well, there's the legal lines that can be drawn with slander or, depending on the comments. I don't know that. I don't know what that line is. Wouldn't want to presume that, but unless they're getting verbally, attacking.
We can discuss that.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Ernie?
Going back to one of the comments about signing letters and everything else and that, just from my own perspective, if I get a communication from wherever and there's no return address on the envelope and there's not signature on the letter, it goes in a circular file immediately. I don't even bother reading it. It's not worth my time to do it. If they don't have the guts enough to sign their name and put their address on it, it isn't worthwhile to even discuss it. So it's a great recyclable item, in that, right at the beginning in that too. So, but the other comment is that with the work going on the roundabout on Wright Street, with where our fire department trying to get out onto 480, what is the plan, I should say, because that's going to be a problem if we have something major out there for them to get through that intersection.
I know they
553.
they are having discussion.
50?
Yep,
550.
550.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are
480.
having discussion about that. There are going to be two roundabouts. They're starting, the first one they're doing is the one at Sugarloaf, which is probably the most problematic of them. And I know Chief DeMars has been having a discussion with his counterpart in the city about how our egress and access would be handled through that. We could always take Forestville Road, I guess.
Wasn't it not the understanding they're gonna always have that one lane open?
Yeah, there'll be one lane open all the time, and emergency vehicles will always have the right of way on that. But it's depending on the time of the year, it can be a very congested corner. If school's back in session early and people are just trying to find their way around. But both of those intersections are going to be done at the same time, but they're starting first on the Sugarloaf, according to what I saw in the paper tonight. I think it was tonight. It's going to be very difficult to get around. It's bad now. It's going to be a lot worse when all of the roundabouts are under construction at the same time. Sugarloaf, Fair Avenue, US 41, Barriga, 7th Street is closed. It's going to be difficult. Fair and Presque Isle, there's going to be a roundabout. So it's going to be an interesting summer tourist season.
Anything else?
Get a bike.
Lucky. The only thing I was going to add is that we've been questioned now about 9 minutes missing in the YouTube video. It has already been addressed. I'll address it again. The meeting was over.
Right.
And from what I understand from Clerk Rattari, the tape actually ran, 9 hours or something?
Well, what happened was the camera operator did not know the meeting was over, and it continued to roll for an extra 9 minutes, and I had to leave early that day. So, and after because I'm usually the one that edit that and put it up. And the supervisor had told me, you know, there was 9 minutes of virtually nothing there, or, you know, that wasn't supposed to be there,
You were
because the
closing
meeting was actually
stuff up.
over. And so I took those off.
Random conversation.
And that's where it ended. And the residents have to realize we do this as a service to them. I have no, there's no law saying we have to record or video anything. I just have to produce minutes of a meeting.
Well, and the minutes end when the meeting ends.
Yeah, so the minutes end when the meeting ends. And we try to do this to be transparent, and I think someone is trying to attack us because we're trying to do our job. And I don't really appreciate that. But, you know, he can come and he's questioned it, and he's got a response. And even go further about that I wasn't going to say anything, but Lynn did kind of prompt me as,
Well, because he brought it up again.
yeah, because we did get asked by the former chief to meet with him. And I'm not going to meet with him. I have no, you know, I don't have to meet with him. I think that anything that he wants, put in writing, and I will respond to him. I don't want to meet with him because I don't want him to bring us into any other lawsuit. You know, he tried to sue us once. I don't want to do that again.
Thank you. So we've, again, like I said, these are issues that the manager takes care of. This is his job. We make the policies. We are going to go into strategic planning in the next week. We're going to start that process again and address the policies. We may look at policy governance, and some of the policies are outdated. We know that, whether it's a procurement or not. We're going to look at all of them. I mean, this stuff all takes time. We have to go through a process.
Well, and you have legislative impacts as well that have impacted your policies, and you've got
Things have changed.
several
yeah.
significant ones pending right now that will dramatically change your policies of the past.
And affect ordinances and everything.
Everything.
So, you know, we're not playing any games here,
No.
folks. I don't know. But yeah, and I told him too, there's no reason for us to meet. All the issues he has are Randy's responsibility. I'm not trying to scapegoat anything. That's just the way this government works. Well, the officers don't have any power to do anything. There's no reason for us to meet with them. That's not our job. We're each one of 7. We work as a group. Other than me signing some stuff and Randy, that's about it. So, that's all I have.
Move to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are finished at
Now that the meeting's over, I'm gonna put the media guy on.